Speaker, the SNP delivered yet another ambitious budget for Scotland yesterday, which saw almost £1 billion for rates relief, £5 billion for energy and climate change, and a 10% uplift for Scotland's colleges. That's the SNP that have delivered 10.5% growth since 2007 compared to the UK's 5.1%. The question isn't what will the UK government do for Scotland's economy, but what will they do to stop damaging it?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, through the shouting I heard the claim that the announcement yesterday in the Scottish budget helped Scottish colleges. I had the opportunity to be at Forth Valley College last week. I simply invite the honourable gentleman to talk to the principal of Forth Valley College, or indeed West College, or any of the FE colleges across Scotland. And if the honourable gentleman wants to suggest for 1 second that the uplift announced yesterday touches the sides of the 20% cut that we saw previously, then it would be an interesting perspective. Look at the numbers, don't judge it on the rhetoric, judge the cuts that his government has delivered, and then come back and perhaps apologise to the young people of Scotland.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Mr. Speaker, business rates are crippling, particularly for hospitality in North East Fife, including hotels, and we know that we haven't seen the initiatives that have delivered business rate relief in Scotland as other parts of the UK. Now, the UK government may be U-turning on this issue, but would they consider a cut to VAT for hospitality so businesses across the UK can benefit?
Secretary of State.
So, Mr. Speaker, my initial glance at the Scottish budget that was announced yesterday suggests that there will still be significant uplifts in 2026 in terms of business rates across Scotland. That is a direct challenge to the claims that we've heard from the Scottish Government in terms of economic growth. And so I hope that, as well as continuing to advocate and make the case to the UK Government, she and her colleagues will take the opportunity to say Scotland's high streets are being let down by the Scottish Government, as surely as Scotland's public services are also being let down.
Harriet Cross.
Money back in people's pockets is vital for economic growth, but today the government has signed the country up to the highest energy bills for offshore energy for the next 10 years, and bills that we'll be paying for 20 years to come. Can the Secretary of State explain how this is going to get more money back in people's pockets to spend on high streets rather than just to spend on higher bills?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's actually start with the facts. Our option today delivers new renewable power that is cheaper to build than operate than building new gas. Let me give you the figures. Here are the key facts. The cost of building and operating new gas, £147 per megawatt hour. The strike price we agreed today, average of £91. That means the price of wind we've secured is 40% lower than the cost of building and operating new gas power plants. It's simply not true.
Jamie Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight, millions of people will tune in to The Traitors, which was filmed at Ardross Castle in my constituency. Really, I should have put on my Claudia Winkleman eyeliner for this one. It's brought millions of pounds and jobs to the Highlands. So can I ask the Secretary of State what plans he has to encourage the screen industry to look at locations like Ardross Castle in Scotland?
So, firstly, Mr. Speaker, I defer to my Cabinet colleague, the Secretary of State for Health, in terms of his expertise and knowledge when it comes to The Traitors. He made a powerful case on television that he had watched the series, and I then had to catch up subsequently. I would simply say Ardross Castle is a fantastic advert for Scotland, not simply within the castle, but the scenes around it. I was talking only yesterday to my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Stirling, about the huge potential for the film industry in Scotland, and we stand ready with our colleagues in DCMS to do whatever we can to support Screen in Scotland.
Brendan O'Hara.
Secretary of State talked about supporting economic growth in Scotland. Well, perhaps he should check in with the local authorities across the Highlands and Islands, who combined have received absolutely nothing from the UK Government's Local Growth Fund. Life is tough enough for our rural communities, so this decision to exclude them from the Local Growth Fund will only make things more difficult. So will he listen to the advice of the leader of Argyll and Bute Council, Councillor Jim Lynch, who desperately seeks that he rethink this allocation?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I understand that the SNP's grievance machine doesn't run on facts, but let me introduce a few facts into the conversation. The Highlands and Islands are benefiting from more than £300 million in investments, including £80 million to support neighbourhoods through Pride and Place, and of course the £25 million for the Inverness and Cromarty Green Freeport. I can attest to that because I visited Inverness and announced it.
Shadow Secretary of State, Andrew Barr.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Labour government are doing absolutely nothing to grow the Scottish economy, from the national insurance increase, the family farm tax, the unemployment rights bill, to gutting the oil and gas industry. Growth halved, unemployment up, inflation up. But not total incompetence. But not only are they incompetent, Mr. Speaker, they are weak. So weak that Scottish Labour announced they wouldn't oppose the SNP's budget before they even knew what was in it. Now, we know they aren't very good at government, but you would have thought, after all these years, they might have worked out how to do opposition, wouldn't you?
Mr. Speaker, let's see whether the opposition frontbench agree with the opposition frontbench leader, because, of course, you don't need to take my word for it in terms of the complete chaos that was left by the last government. The present leader of the Conservative Party is the one who admitted they had, and I quote, no plan for growth. So we're not going to take any lectures from a party that delivered not just the Liz Truss budget, but an economy that was high in inequality and low in growth.
Andrew Bowie.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we saw yesterday from the SNP was nothing more than the same old, tired, stale government with tired, stale gimmicks, handouts, and an addiction to punishing hard-working Scots with the highest taxes for poorer services. Nothing for growth, nothing for entrepreneurs, and nothing for businesses. But what would you expect from the separatist pressure group cosplaying as a government that is the SNP? So does the Secretary of State agree that after 19 years we need change in Scotland, and that the only party with a plan to cut tax, cut the benefit bill and support business and grow the economy is the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party?
Secretary of State.
Unsurprisingly, no. I half agree with him, which is that Scotland frankly deserves better than a government that after 19 years is claiming to be the change that Scotland needs. The reality is, when I'm on the doorsteps in East Lothian, I ask people inclined to vote SNP a single question. Name a single area of Scottish public life that has got better over the last 19 years. We've had 2 decades of talking about independence. What do we have to show for it? This isn't the change that Scotland needs this budget. The change we need is an As Sarwar and Scottish Labour.
Susan Merritt, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate the Government on the successful 7th round of the allocation of green energy and CFD contracts, nearly 20% of which are going to Scotland. It's good to see that even amid their U-turns, a Liberal Democrat system from over a decade ago is still delivering. What discussions has the Minister had with his Cabinet colleagues to ensure the benefits are passed on to the Scottish people through skilled jobs, working to upgrade the grid, and crucially through protecting and defending our offshore infrastructure?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I was last in touch with the Designated Secretary about an hour ago before Scottish Questions. I talked to him after the Cabinet and discussed these issues with him in the Cabinet. The choice, and it's a very serious question, it deserves a serious answer, the choice is not whether to build, but what to build. And our answer is clean homegrown power that we in the United Kingdom control. Our answer is that we should build new renewables because they are cheaper to build and to operate than gas.
Stephen Guthins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can I wish the Secretary of State the best for 2026? I'm glad that he caught the traitors, because I have to say I'm so sorry to have heard the language that was being used about Scottish Labour MPs by Labour MPs in the press recently. So I wish him the best. But can he tell me the best way to improve our lives and our economy? Why is Scotland the only part of the UK where child poverty is going down?
Well, in part, child poverty is going to be falling because of the 95,000 kids that we helped by abolishing the 2-child cap. It is not a coincidence that on a single afternoon, our Chancellor of the Exchequer took the mantle from Gordon Brown as being the politician who lifted the most kids out of poverty across the UK in a single parliament. Gordon Brown had taken that mantle previously from Denis Healey. It is not a coincidence that Labour Chancellors lift kids out of poverty. That's what we do, and we're proud of it.
Take the Secretary of State a little bit more seriously if so many Labour MPs hadn't lost the whip for backing our vote on tackling the 2-child cap. Now, the Scottish Child Payment has been described as game-changing. That's been extended to babies to get additional funding, meaning that those from deprived communities in Scotland get the best start in life anywhere in the UK in Scotland. So why on earth are the Labour Party abstaining on the budget? And just as the Prime Minister turns up, maybe the Labour Party can explain why they abstain and why they don't stand for anything.
Because, Mr. Speaker, we're not spending our time indulging in the games of the opposition. We're getting on with the serious job of government. Whether that is delivering a record package of employment rights to help raise pay, because the critical point that he failed to mention was 3/4 of the kids in poverty in our country today are in working households. That's why the Employment Rights Bill matters. That's why 220,000 people being lifted out of poverty as a consequence of increases in the minimum wage matter. We have a comprehensive approach, which is why we've got a comprehensive strategy.
On Scott Harper.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I firstly pay tribute to my honourable friend's very passionate advocacy for higher education in Scotland. He'll be well aware that the Scottish Government have received an additional £11 billion since the general election, money that could have been spent on Scotland's world-class universities and colleges. But as a recent Audit Scotland report shows, these institutions have been put under immense stress, with Scottish colleges suffering a 20% cut in real terms funding since 2021. It's utterly shameful.
Scott Harper.
Mr. Speaker, Scotland's universities have been facing a funding crisis which has been many years in the making. Funding for students in Scottish universities is currently over £2,000 less than it is in England. Universities Scotland yesterday, in response to the SNP budget, made it clear that it will have little impact on this problem, as it does not adequately address the situation. No government in Europe, Mr. Speaker, cares less about the education of its young people. Will the Secretary of State or the Minister make time to visit Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh South West, to meet with the Vice-Chancellor, Richard Williams, the staff and the students to hear about the impact of this situation?
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend that Scotland's young people have been appallingly let down, which is why it's time for a new direction. I would, of course, be delighted to meet with him and Heriot-Watt representatives to discuss Scotland's desperate need for a new direction.
Right, we now come to Prime Minister's questions. Lincoln Job.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Very well done. Mr. Speaker, can I start by condemning, in the strongest possible terms, the sickening repression and murder of protesters in Iran? The contrast between the courage of the Iranian people and the brutality of their desperate regime has never been clearer. Mr. Speaker, we've called out this brutality face to face. We're working with allies on further sanctions and doing all we can to protect UK nationals. Mr. Speaker, time and again, under the party opposite, towns and cities across the north were failed. Today, this Labour government delivers change. A major new rail network across the north and a new northern growth strategy. That is the renewal that this country voted for. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks, particularly about Iran. Visiting schools in my Spelthorne constituency is one of the great joys of this job. So I was frankly appalled to hear that the Labour Member of Parliament for Bristol North East was prevented from visiting a school in his constituency because he is Jewish. This is anti-Semitism, and it is happening in plain sight. With all due respect to the Prime Minister, I don't want to know how he feels about this. I want to know what he's going to do about it.
Prime Minister.
Can I start by thanking him for raising this case, because it is very serious, very concerning. And all members of Parliament should be able to visit anywhere in their constituency, schools or other places, without any fear of anti-Semitism. We do take this seriously. We're providing more funding for security and support we're putting in across the country, and we will be holding those to account who prevented this visit to this school.
Annalise Midgley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for his commitment to delivering the Hillsborough Law. But it has been proven that following the Manchester Arena bombings, MI5 spent 6 years misleading the public and concealing information. There was no risk to national security because it was a closed hearing. So will the Prime Minister deliver justice for those families and confirm that this government will bring forward an amendment that will make robust the duties and responsibilities of Canada for all parts of the state, including individuals in the security services, so we can finally say, never again?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend? The Hillsborough law will right wrongs of the past, changing the balance of power to ensure the state can never hide from the people it should serve. And I would like to acknowledge, Mr Speaker, I think some of the families are in the gallery with us here today, and I will be meeting them later on this afternoon. I've always been clear the duty of candour applies to the intelligence services. I made a commitment we wouldn't water down the bill, and the amendments we put forward strengthen it. It is right that there are essential safeguards in place to protect national security, and we've got that balance right. I will meet the families and will outline the next steps on Monday in relation to that crucial balance.
We come to the Leader of the Opposition, Kevin Bednall.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I agree with the Prime Minister's comments on Iran? Today, Irfan Soltani faces execution for protesting in Iran, and I'm sure the whole House will be united in condemning this. Our thoughts are with him and his family and the brave protesters fighting for their freedom against an evil regime. Mr Speaker, I know the Home Secretary will be making a statement today on the West Midlands Police. The first thing that she should be announcing is the sacking of the Chief Constable. And I thank the member for West Suffolk for relentlessly pushing this issue. Mr Speaker, can I welcome the Prime Minister's latest U-turn? I feel like I say that every week. Mandatory digital ID was a rubbish policy, and we on this side of the House are glad to see the back of it. But yesterday, the Health Secretary said the Prime Minister's New Year's resolution should be, and I quote, to try to get it right first. To try to get it right first time. Try to get it right first time. Yes, you did say that. You did say that. My question is, does he agree?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm determined to make it harder for people to work illegally in this country, and that's why there will be checks, they will be digital and they will be mandatory. And I'll tell her what this government is doing, whether on planning, child poverty, employment rights, investing in our NHS. We're taking the right choices for Britain, and they oppose every single one of them. And she talks about U-turns and consistency. From the party that used to recognise the challenge of climate change, and now they run from it, who promised to cut immigration, but then lost control of it, who once took great pride in our diversity. Now they talk of deporting our neighbours to achieve cultural coherence. And, Mr Speaker, on consistency, don't get me started on 5 Prime Ministers, 6 Chancellors, 8 Home Secretaries, 16 Housing Ministers. They had more positions in 14 years than the Kama Sutra. No wonder they're knackered and they left the country screwed.
Kevin Bednall.
A lot of waffle, Mr Speaker, but it's still a U-turn. The member for Hull East has said, it's so interesting, Mr Speaker, Labour MPs must think very carefully before defending policy decisions publicly. He said, and I quote, "This stuff leaves us looking really stupid." I'm sorry to tell him, but Labour MPs have been looking stupid for a long time. But let's look, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, let's look at some other things the Prime Minister didn't get right first time, starting with the family farms tax. Some farmers were so terrified they sold their farms last year only for the Prime Minister to U-turn 2 days before Christmas. Will he apologise for the misery he's caused countless farmers?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the principle we put in place on inheritance tax is the right one. We listened, we made an asterisk. But what we're doing is turning the country around. Yes, we've changed the country. We've changed We've changed the failed approach of the last Tory government. They crashed the economy and sent mortgage rates through the roof. They left millions stuck on NHS waiting lists. They presided over the worst Parliament for living standards on record. Now we're turning that around. We're changing that. Inflation and interest rates are coming down. Waiting lists are coming down. Wages are up more in the first year of a Labour government than 10 years of the Tory government. But I understand, Mr. Speaker, that she's taking advice on change. She had Nadhim Zahawi in to ask his advice how to change and how to save her party. Please don't tell me she listened to his accountant. The next day after the advice, he jumped ship to reform, the 23rd former Tory MP to do so. I don't know which is more pitiful, the flood of former Tory MPs deserting her sinking ship, or the Reform Party so desperate to launder any old failed Tory politician.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't need to worry about me. I'm all right. And I didn't hear an apology. I didn't hear an apology to the farmers. Has he even apologised to the member for Penrith, who stood up for farmers only to have the whip removed? This Prime Minister treats his MPs so badly, they follow his lead, and he hangs them out to dry every time. Let's turn to another area the Prime Minister has got wrong. His budget doubled business rates for thousands of pubs. So can the Prime Minister tell us, is there going to be any change to his business rates policy?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're working with the sector to ensure that they get the support that they need. I have to say, the Leader of the Opposition's newfound concern for pubs will come as a surprise to anyone who remembers the 7,000 pubs that were closed under the Tories. And as Business Secretary, she didn't say a word about it. So we support business. We also support workers, Mr. Speaker. And that's why we passed our Employment Rights Act. And on Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the Business Secretary and I went to Croydon to discuss our Employment Rights Act with workers there. They were very keen on the paternity rights and the maternity rights, which I know the Leader of the Opposition opposes. And whilst we were there at IKEA, they showed me their new prototype, the IKEA Shadow Cabinet. The trouble is, nobody wants to buy it. It's mainly constructed of old dead wood. And every time you lose a nut, it defects to reform.
Mr. Speaker, he didn't answer the question about business rates. It sounds like he doesn't know what his policy is. And this has been a farce from start to finish. On Monday, the Business Secretary said the Chancellor did not even realise the impact of her business rates policy. No surprise there. But yesterday, the Tax Office said that they did tell the government what the impact would be. So can the Prime Minister be clear? Did he understand the impact of his own policy on pubs?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're working with this sector. She hasn't explained why she said nothing about the 7,000 pubs that close on her watch. We're doing other things on the cost of living to help people, to make sure they can get out, to spend money in pubs and hospitality, boosting the minimum wage. What did they do? They opposed it. Freezing rail fares and prescription charges. What did they do? They opposed it. £150 off energy bills. What did they do? They opposed it. She said nothing when pubs were closing, and she opposes every measure now. And she said a moment ago, I'm all right. She clearly didn't listen to the advice of Nadhim Zahawi, because what he told her, he's now made fun of it. He told her that they failed on mass migration, they failed on our armed forces, and he told her that she's leading, his words, a defunct brand the nation can no longer trust. No wonder he's joined the Tory migration to reform. Mr. Speaker, it's the second Boris wave.
Mr. Speaker, I asked him if he understood the impact of his own policy. He didn't say yes. The reason he U-turns all the time is because he is clueless. He is blowing around like a plastic bag in the wind, no sense of direction whatsoever. And let's be clear, Mr. Speaker, this mess goes beyond pubs. The whole of the hospitality industry, cafes, hotels, restaurants, they're all being clobbered by Labour's tax hikes. There is an answer to this. Conservatives would abolish business rates for small businesses on the high street. Mr. Speaker, yes, they're all chuntering. He's already agreeing with us on family farms tax. He's already agreeing with us on digital ID. Why doesn't he make it a hat trick and abolish business rates for the high street?
Mr. Speaker, they crashed the economy, and now they want to give lectures. She's wondering why nobody's listening to them. Nobody is ever going to listen to them on the economy ever again. Mr. Speaker, in 18 months, because of the decisions we've made, inflation is falling, and the Bank of England say it's coming back down to target. We've had 6 interest rate cuts in a row. Wages are up more in the first year of a Labour government than under the first 10 years of their government, and we beat the forecasts on growth for 2025. We're turning this country around after the appalling mess that they left it in.
He says no one's going to listen to us. Who's going to listen to him? The winter fuel allowance, U-turn. Waspy women, U-turn. The 2-child benefit cap, U-turn. Grooming gangs inquiry, U-turn. The family farms tax, U-turn. Digital ID, U-turn. Jury trials? U-turn. We hope so. We hope so. I think that's going to be the next one, Mr. Speaker. Week after week, these poor people sitting behind him have to defend the indefensible, only for him to U-turn a few days later. Mr. Speaker, one of his cabinet ministers told a journalist that what's happening at the moment is extraordinarily bad. Another said we've gone through a catastrophic series of missteps. Yet another minister said, we are so unpopular at the moment, I've come to the conclusion it's worth rolling the dice on a new leader. They're right, aren't they?
Mr. Speaker, here's the difference. I changed my party, and that's why we stand here with a majority Labour government. She sits there with her party that lost 2/3 of their MPs at the last election, and she's losing more every week. They're queuing up to join the member of Clacton's laundry service for disgraced Tory politicians. Meanwhile, inflation is down, wages are up, and waiting lists are down. Labour's turning the corner and changing this country for the better.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you will agree, and I hope others across the chamber will also, that we need to recognise and to celebrate achievements. And I say this because across the country, knife crime offences is going down. And of course, more needs to be done and more should be done. But this week's figures have shown that London has had its safest year ever under the London Mayor Sadiq Khan. And in fact, homicide rate in London is the lowest ever since records began. Now, Mr. Speaker, Reform and the Conservatives repeatedly talk down our capital city. So will the Prime Minister join me in saying they are wrong, and will he applaud these achievements?
Well, she draws attention to the important work of the Mayor of London, and nobody should be talking our country down or talking London down. And she's right to say that since we came into office, the number of knife crime offences is down. But, Mr. Speaker, there is more to do. We're introducing new powers to seize knives and increasing the penalty for selling knives to under-18s. And the party opposite, what did they do? They're chuntering. They voted against those provisions. And what's obvious about London and Reform is they've got a candidate for mayor who doesn't like London, a new ex-Tory recruit who struggled to pay his taxes in this country, and a leader who spends more time in France than in his constituency.
Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself and my party with the Prime Minister's comments on Iran? And can I encourage him to go even further on sanctions and also prescribe the IRG? Mr. Speaker, Sandra is 71. She has bladder cancer.
Just after Christmas, she went into her local A&E. She had to wait 31 hours to be admitted on a plastic trolley and in a plastic chair. Last year, more than 500,000 people waited for over 12 hours in A&E to be admitted, more than any year in the history of the NHS. Mr. Speaker, this corridor care crisis was created by the Conservatives, but it's got worse under Labour. So will the Prime Minister end this scandal by taking up our plan to end all 12-hour A&E waits this year?
Prime Minister.
Can I first say through him to Sandra that that's simply not acceptable for her or for anybody else, and I'd appreciate if he passes that on to her directly. We have put record investment into the NHS so that we can turn this problem around, and we are turning it around. I would say to him that he puts forward his plans for change, but he never votes for the increase in investment and the measures that are needed to actually put that into practice. You can't change things without investing in them. You can't call for change and vote against a budget that puts a record investment into the NHS.
Sir Ed Davey.
Mr. Speaker, we saw what happened to the last government when they failed to improve the NHS, and if the Prime Minister is not careful, that will happen to his. Mr. Speaker, last month I asked the Prime Minister to get a grip of South East Water, who'd left thousands of people in Royal Tunbridge Wells without water. Now it's happened again, not only in Tunbridge Wells, but in East Grinstead, Burgess Hill, Havers Heath, and other parts of Kent and Sussex. Families, pensioners, schools, care homes, businesses without any water since Saturday. And the water company bosses involved now stand accused of misleading Parliament over their failures. Mr. Speaker, South East Water keeps failing its customers over and over again. So will the government immediately strip them of their licence?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this, because the situation is clearly totally unacceptable. He will want to know that ministers have chaired daily emergency meetings to hold the company to account, to deliver on the change that's urgently needed at the moment in all the areas that he mentioned. We've also doubled the compensation rates for individuals and businesses. And we're absolutely clear the company must urgently invest in infrastructure, and we'll publish the Water White Paper in due course. But we are holding those daily meetings to hold this company to account.
Dr. Maria Timble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted by today's Northern Powerhouse Rail announcement. A down payment on the North of England's future. Fulfilling Lord Blunkett's rail plan for Yorkshire also included upgrades to the Penistone Line train, the spine that connects South to West Yorkshire, coursing through 8 constituencies, serving 500,000 people. When I was growing up, my dad opened Silkstone Common Station as a Dodworth councillor. I want my legacy to be 2 trains an hour Tidball for our Penistone line. Will the Prime Minister meet with me to discuss how we can secure funding for the second phase of the Penistone Line upgrade scheme to achieve 2 services an hour?
Prime Minister.
Can I pay tribute to her as a dedicated campaigner on this and so many other issues? And I'm delighted that today we're announcing a transformation in journeys across the north. Of course, it was said and promised many times by the party opposite, but never delivered. We're taking action and delivering. We're working with Kirklees Council to prepare the business case for the first phase of upgrading the line, and I know the Transport Secretary would be happy to discuss the details of that with her.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Question time last week, the Prime Minister seemed to intimate that the Government was bringing forward amendments to the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill. Within hours of him saying that, the Irish Government's Minister for Foreign Affairs said that any significant changes must have the full agreement of both governments. So, Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Prime Minister, is he intending bringing forward amendments to a flawed Troubles Bill and give a reassurance that the Irish Government does not have a veto over legislation in this House?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this and tell him I spoke to the Taoiseach in December about this, and I know he's committed to delivering on this. The new legacy unit has been established within the Garda, and I'm confident the Irish Government's other commitments will be delivered as set out in the joint framework. For the first time, information held by the Irish authorities is being shared with a reformed Legacy Commission, meaning more families and victims of terrorism getting information about what happened to their loved ones.
Glendon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Prime Minister's leadership and our government's clear commitment to tackling child poverty, recognising that high-quality education is one of the best routes out of poverty. However, young people in one of the most deprived areas of my constituency, attending Churchill Community College, have been taught in temporary accommodation for over 16 months. Can the Prime Minister use his good offices to expedite funding from the Department for Education to support rebuilding this school? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Can I say I'm very proud of what we're doing on child poverty, lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. The party opposite says their policy is to plunge them straight back into poverty, and they should be ashamed of that. The situation she draws my attention to is appalling. Parents and teachers are furious that the party opposite left schools literally crumbling. We invested, Mr. Speaker, £20 billion to rebuild around 800 schools, and our aim is all schools and colleges in England that aren't being fully or substantially rebuilt to be rack-free by the end of the Parliament, and I'll make sure a Minister meets with her to discuss this.
Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I visited Stepping Hill Hospital in my constituency, where I met the incredible team there, but they are working in some of the worst conditions. The staff there showed me the wards where sewage is coming up onto the floors through the drains, and they showed me the ceilings where water is dripping down out onto vital equipment. The hospital itself has a £130 million repair bill, and the Prime Minister is the man that can change this. So will he meet with me, the member for Hazel Grove and the member for Stockport constituency, so we can talk to him about this issue, get some investment in, and then get the hospital that my constituents deserve?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this, and he knows we inherited a terrible situation with waiting lists, performance targets missed, and hospitals like Stepping Hill left to crumble. They should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. I'm pleased the new outpatients building is open, and because of our decisions, the local trust will receive £75 million in capital funding. Progress is being made. His local trust has seen waiting lists fall by almost 3,000. The number of waits over a year is down by 67%. I will make sure he gets the meeting that he wants to discuss the details further.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If reports are correct, Elon Musk has climbed down today under pressure from this government. And let's be clear, stripping women naked without consent in real life or online is abuse. But we don't know whether to trust what X is saying today, and this isn't just happening on X. So will the Prime Minister join me and men and women across this House and our nation to say to any app and to any AI company that we will not tolerate and we will enforce any abuse of men, women or children in this country?
Can I thank her for raising this? The actions of Grok and X are disgusting and they're shameful. And frankly, the decision to then turn this into a premium service is horrific. And we're absolutely determined to take action here. We've made it clear that X has to act, and if not, Ofcom has our full backing and will introduce and are introducing legislation. Mr. Speaker, to update the House, I have been informed this morning that X is acting to ensure full compliance with UK law. If so, that is welcome, but we're not going to back down. They must act. We will take the necessary measures, we will strengthen existing laws and prepare for legislation if it needs to go further, and Ofcom will continue its independent investigation.
As someone with a personal experience of AI-generated images, the recent AI images shared on X, particularly those of children, sickens me. Yet, the leader of reform continues to defend Elon Musk. Anyone who defends platforms linked to sexual exploitation of children forfeits any right to give lectures about protecting women and girls. What What will the Prime Minister do to stop any political party from putting tech billionaires ahead of protecting our children?
Can I thank her for raising this? And it's astonishing that Reform defend Musk on this issue. It is complete. I said the images are disgusting. Their position is disgusting on this. This is weaponising images of women and children that should never be made. And that's why we're acting. Reform refused to do anything about it. But more than that, the point she raises, they would scrap the Online Safety Act that stops children accessing content like pornography, suicide, self-harm and eating disorders. They're an absolute disgrace and know nothing about protecting children.
Can I just say, we're only on question 18. If we don't want to get MPs in, please, you're going to have to work with me. Kevin Bonavent.
Many of my constituents and Stevenage were appalled to hear Reform MPs oppose the principle of deploying British troops to maintain a peace in Ukraine. Our brilliant armed forces have defended democracy in Europe across a generation, so it is shameful that the leader of Reform opposes that today. That is not leadership, it is surrender. Does the Prime Minister agree that Labour governments always have and always will defend British interests, not those of Russian dictators or oligarchs?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is a question of values and freedom, I'm proud of the British workers in his constituency, in fact, supporting our Ukrainian allies. Ukrainian soldiers are defending European values on the front line every day. And, Mr. Speaker, in the event of a ceasefire, multinational force will carry out defence and deterrence operations and conduct training, planning, recovery and regeneration of Ukrainian forces. But this week, the leader of Reform said Russia had a casus belli. That means a justification for war in invading Ukraine. A Putin apologist using Russia's talking points.
Lewis Cocking.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The world is becoming more dangerous every single day, and the Ministry of Defence has said it needs an extra £28 billion to keep us safe. Well, I know where the Prime Minister can find it. Stop this nonsense Chagos Island surrender policy and spend that money on protecting the United Kingdom. Will the Prime Minister commit to that, or will he continue to put the interests of foreign governments and countries above our own?
Diego Garcia is a vital military base with important capabilities of our own. It's integral to our security. Our decision was welcomed by our allies, the Five Eyes, India and the United States. It was opposed by our enemies, including Russia. Now we can add the Tories to that list and Reform to that list. The Tories following Reform, Reform following Putin.
Yasmin Qureshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer my condolences to the families of the 4 people who died in the road traffic accident which occurred over the weekend in my constituency. Mr. Speaker, families in Bolton South and Walkden are already benefiting from this Labour government's action on free school meals, free breakfast clubs, 30 hours funded childcare, scrapping of the 2-child limit, taking nearly 500,000 children out of poverty. But in Bolton South and Walkden and across the country, there is a chronic shortage of social housing and genuine affordable homes. Will the Prime Minister now show the same ambition on housing and commit to a major expansion of social housing?
Prime Minister.
Can I just say that my thoughts, and I think the thoughts of the whole House, will be with all those affected by the terrible road traffic accident in her constituency over the weekend, and our thoughts with all of those so awfully impacted. On her question, we are determined to restore the dream of home ownership. That's why there's been £39 billion of investment to deliver the biggest boost in social and affordable housing in a generation. Through planning reforms, the New Homes Accelerator and New Towns, we're determined to deliver the homes that people need.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, but I and many have concerns about stigmatising young boys, men and masculinity as inherently toxic, especially when suicide is the #1 killer for young men. So is it about time that we have a minister for men and boys? Because this is about women and men, not women or men.
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for his support on what we're doing on violence against women and girls? Can I also agree with him that this isn't about women or men or boys or girls? It's about both. And that's why I was very pleased to bring forward our men's health strategy, one of the first of its sort, to deal with the challenges that young men in particular, in my view, have growing up, particularly with social media, but also to go further on the question of suicide. And I know that that's something that the whole House is prepared to work together on, and quite right too.
Caroline Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As trade envoy to New Zealand, last year I visited Eden Park in Auckland to hear their exciting plans to bring the Edinburgh tattoo to New Zealand. Well, next month that plan becomes a reality, and one of Scotland and the UK's greatest military displays will be taking place in Auckland. This spectacular event is testament to the exciting and successful trading relationship between the UK and New Zealand. Will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating and thanking everyone who's made this a reality?
Can I thank her for raising that? Because the Royal Edinburgh military tattoo is absolutely brilliant, as anybody who's seen it will attest. And I'm so pleased that it's heading to New Zealand, and I think it's another example of Scotland's unique contribution to our international image, our culture and tourism. And I think we all wish them the very best of luck in their performance, and I know it'll be very well received.
Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The police fabricated intelligence to get Israelis banned from Villa Park, as demanded by Islamists. It's not an isolated case. Forces cut deals with dodgy mosques and refuse to arrest preachers who incite violence. The CPS uses the Public Order Act as an Islamic blasphemy law. In prison, governors do deals with Islamists to maintain order. And we all know about the rape gangs. So will the Prime Minister launch a review of the corruption of our criminal justice system by Islamists and the politics of communalism?
Prime Minister.
Well, I disagreed, as he knows, with the decision of the West Midlands Police, and the Home Secretary will be making a statement in relation to it today. Mr. Speaker, the Home Secretary used to have power to remove Chief Constables. That power was stripped by the 2011 Police Reform Act. The honourable member knows who was making decisions in the Home Office at the time. It was him, working for Theresa May, that stripped that power away.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and a belated Happy New Year. But for the 4.8 million leaseholders across England, it's not a Happy New Year. They're going to be receiving large bills in a matter of weeks. They've been waiting patiently for us as a new government, a government that said we were going to deliver that change to bring forward the legislation on leasehold and commonhold. So I want to ask the Prime Minister, when will we see that legislation so that we can put those leaseholders out of their misery?
Well, can I thank her for raising this really important issue, and we are bringing forward proposals very shortly now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 35,000 children, including my constituent Clover, live with uncontrolled, life-threatening epilepsy. Those who can afford it are already benefiting from prescribed medical cannabis, yet families face endless delays, confused trials and a Home Office process designed for criminal misuse, not healthcare. Will the Prime Minister meet with me and affected families to move paediatric medical cannabis out of Home Office control, create a pathway for proper trials and NHS access, and ensure that all children with life-threatening epilepsy get the care they deserve, regardless of their family circumstances?
Well, can I thank you for raising the case of Clover? NHS England and the National Institute of Health and Care Research recently agreed funding for 2 world-first clinical trials relating to the use of cannabis-based products. This could help see medicines more routinely available in the NHS, and I'll make sure that she gets the meeting that she wants with the relevant minister to discuss what else we're doing.
Helena Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The people I represent are fed up with Southern Water, from sewage to broken pipes and water outages, even on Christmas Day. In November, millions of plastic beads washed up on our beaches, and we discovered they'd come from a Southern Water treatment plant. I'm now campaigning for water companies to stop using this outdated plastic bead method and bin the beads. We're really concerned about the impact on wildlife, and we have a massive clean-up operation on our hands. Over 5,000 people have already supported my campaign with Sussex Wildlife Trust. Will the Prime Minister join me in sharing his horror at this dereliction of duty from Southern Water and calling on them to face the full force of the law for this terrible pollution incident?
Can I credit her with helping expose this scandal and working with her and everyone in her community, volunteering to clean up the beaches? That is the very best of who we are. But people are right to be furious that for far too long water companies were allowed to get away with polluting our seas and beaches. The Environment Agency are leading a full investigation, but we are more generally ending unfair bonuses for polluting water bosses, abolishing Ofwat and introducing tougher penalties, holding companies to account.
Then the best objection.
Mr. Speaker, ahead of the forthcoming consultation on local government reorganisation, last month Huntingdonshire District Council voted for option E, a Huntingdonshire Unitary Council. This was a cross-party view, and the Prime Minister's own Labour councillors voted in favour of it. There is a suspicion locally that the government favours option D, proposed by the Labour Eastern Regional Office, which would see Huntingdonshire and my constituency split in two and combined with Peterborough. Can the Prime Minister offer assurances to my constituents and those across Huntingdonshire that the decision isn't already a done deal and that the democratic will of Huntingdonshire District Council won't be overridden to satisfy an unelected Labour regional office?
Prime Minister.
There are no done deals here. We're going through the proper process.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The staff at West Herts Teaching Hospitals Trust, which operates Watford General in my constituency, have been very busy bees. They have recently won Trust of the Year and Performance Recovery at the 2025 Health Service Journal Awards. Will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating the amazing team at Watford General and thank them for all the hard work that they have done to achieve this admirable accolade? Imagine what further achievements that they will make when they have their new hospital and new facilities.
I will join him and thank the staff in his hospital, but also the NHS staff across the country who worked so hard over Christmas and New Year, which is notoriously a difficult time.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches change over. We now come to the first statement. I call the Secretary of State for Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a statement on the government's plans for Northern Powerhouse Rail. I realise I'm not the first minister ever to talk about transforming infrastructure in the north of England. I get why people there are sick to the back teeth of Westminster politicians promising the earth and delivering absolutely nothing. Parties, whether the Tories or Reform, who lack ambition and are either incapable or unwilling of doing the hard yards of delivery. This ends today, Mr. Speaker. It's been over a decade since the then Conservative Chancellor pledged a transport system fit for a northern powerhouse. And what came of it? HS2 to Manchester and Leeds, both promised, both axed. Rail services that have let down commuters, and a railway still reliant on diesel trains and two-track Victorian infrastructure. Levelling up, the integrated rail plan, Network North, just empty slogans and even emptier pockets to pay for them. Mr. Speaker, this gulf between rhetoric and reality has consequences. An unbalanced economy doesn't just affect growth. It strikes at the heart of the fairer country we want to be. Political choices over decades now mean a 40-mile commute into Manchester is a world away from a similar journey into London. Take Liverpool, which has only 2 fast trains an hour to Manchester, where a direct rail journey to Manchester Airport takes an hour and 25 minutes when it's only 28 miles away. Or take Leeds, still the largest city in Western Europe without mass transit, with only a third of the population able to reach the city centre in 30 minutes. Mr. Speaker, we are finally consigning this sorry political legacy to the bonfire of history. Yeah. No previous government has acted as swiftly and decisively to back northern leaders. We've made the largest ever investment into local transport. We've given the go-ahead to road and rail projects across the north, and we're allocating billions of pounds in pothole funding to local leaders across this Parliament. And today, Mr. Speaker, we're going further. After years of underinvestment in the North's rail network, I am proud to announce we will deliver Northern Powerhouse Rail. Yeah. This is a generational commitment, building on the ongoing Transpennine route upgrade. We will invest up to a further £45 billion to create a turn-up-and-go railway along the northern growth corridor of Liverpool, Manchester, Bradford, Leeds, Sheffield, as well as York. There will be regular services onward to Newcastle and Hull, and to Chester for connections to North Wales. Make no mistake, NPR will transform how people travel, will end the hour-long waits if you miss your train, will attract more people to a railway that will be faster, more accessible and more frequent than ever before. For Northerners who have long complained about being treated as second-class citizens, my message is simple. Those days are over. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, this is an ambitious long-term programme, but it is not HS2 reheated. I stood in this House last year and said we'd learnt the lessons of that infrastructure project, and I meant it. Unlike the previous government's Network North plan, which was announced without so much as a phone call to the mayors, we have been working directly with them on developing these proposals, and I'm proud to announce that every single one of those mayors is backing the plan today. Yeah. I'm clear that NPR will not be a central government vanity project. It will be rooted in northern communities, designed, developed and delivered from the bottom up. We'll also take the time to get this right. That starts with agreeing mature, stable designs as well as consents, all before construction. Finally, unlike HS2, this isn't about the fastest line at any cost. Northern Powerhouse Rail will be the shoulders of this nation's rail network, improving services across the north and beyond. Let me now turn to delivery, Mr. Speaker. We are making £1.1 billion available to deliver NPR over the next 4 years. This will proceed in 3 phases, sequenced so passengers experience a better railway as soon as possible. The first phase will prioritise electrification and upgrades east of the Pennines for delivery in the 2030s. That covers the Leeds-Bradford, Sheffield-Leeds and Leeds-York corridors, including the stations. Alongside NPR, we'll develop the business case for the Leamside line as part of our broader plans for the north, and I want to pay tribute to the Honourable Member for Washington and Gateshead South, who has been campaigning on this for over 20 years. Mr. Speaker, Phase 1's benefits will be clear. It means pressing forward with plans for a new station in Bradford, with funding secured to take it forward subject to business case. And it means working with local leaders on a redesigned York Station master plan. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognise the work carried out by Lord Blunkett in his Yorkshire Plan for Rail. It was his vision, endorsed by the White Rose mayors, which informed our plans for Phase 1, and I'm proud that Lord Blunkett is backing our plans today. Work also starts now for the second phase, west of the Pennines, with major construction planned for the 2030s. It includes a new route and predominantly new line between Liverpool and Manchester. This will run via new stations, improving access to Manchester Airport from across the North and North Wales and to Warrington Bank Quay, with plans to deliver thousands of new homes. I have today instructed my officials to immediately resume work on the adapted hybrid bill so we can reach planning consent for the parts of the route in Manchester. These plans align with the prospectus of the Liverpool to Manchester Railway Board, and I'd like to thank all of them, including the chair of that board, the former Rail Minister Hugh Merriman, who is also backing our plans today. Mr. Speaker, the third phase, which takes us to the 2040s, will improve connectivity across the Pennines over and above the Trans-Pennine route upgrade currently underway. And I see Bradford to Manchester, Leeds to Manchester and Sheffield to Manchester as key routes we will upgrade. Mr. Speaker, if we are to secure Britain's long-term growth, we must also recognise future capacity and connectivity is needed along other major routes, such as the West Coast Main Line, and ensure that this is reflected in our decision-making now. I can therefore confirm this government's long-term aim to see a full new north-south line from Birmingham to Manchester. That's one of the reasons why we have chosen the Liverpool to Manchester route as put forward by local mayors, because it's the only route that properly preserves our ability to ultimately build a new line south to address longer-term congestion and crowding challenges on the West Coast Main Line. Again, this won't be a revival of HS2, and no decisions have been taken on the specification or timetable. In the meantime, we'll retain land the government has already purchased between the West Midlands and Crewe. This will be an incremental programme of change, and delivery will be taken forward after MPR has been built. Nevertheless, I believe laying out now our strategy is sensible, responsible and in the long-term interests of the country. Mr. Speaker, today we're announcing a second rail revolution in the very region that gave us the first. The North powered Britain's past. It can lead this country's future. This plan is a down payment on the North's potential, part of a broader growth drive to lift the region's productivity, boost living standards and add tens of billions to the UK economy. At the heart of this lies connectivity, because only by strengthening the links between our northern cities, only by bringing the pools of talent there closer together, can the region begin to rival the other major growth corridors in Europe. Mr. Speaker, too many northerners still face the choice of either staying at home and putting aspiration on hold or moving away in search of a better future. I say no more unfair choices, no more missed opportunities. Today we start delivering Northern Powerhouse Rail, and I commend this statement to the House.
May you, Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and may I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of her statement. Now, she started her statement by saying that people are sick to the back teeth of Westminster politicians promising the earth and delivering absolutely nothing, and then she did exactly that. Because on this side of the House, we know, Mr. Speaker, what the Right Honourable Lady's statement marks today. It's not a strategy for the North. It's not a genuine commitment to a £46 billion project, costed back in 2019 at £46 billion, as the current Prime Minister then promised. Instead, it's a flagrant attempt to silence her party's restless northern mayors, whilst Labour ministers who came to office with no plan to deliver on their promises butcher the budget. Let's get straight to the point here. She can bluster all she likes, but where Northern Powerhouse Rail is concerned, today we have no construction start dates, no completion dates, no published or costed route map, no sequencing, no idea who will pay, nor by how much, and no certainty at all, except it won't be what Labour promised ahead of the election. She says, Mr. Speaker, this is a generational commitment. Well, at this rate, it's going to turn out to be a multi-generational commitment. Because if the Prime Minister wanted to deliver what he actually promised in opposition, he knows he'd have another black hole of billions. Such is the uncertainty, the genuine uncertainty caused to the sector by this announcement. What we have, Mr. Speaker, is a commitment to fiddling with the paperwork without any secure investment for the actual project. Yet the Right Honourable Lady expects this House to believe that this is some sort of investment in the North. She and her ministers must be delighted that the Mayor of Greater Manchester overplayed his hand at the Labour Party conference last year. So today he feels constrained to profess loyalty to the Prime Minister, perhaps wonderment at his generosity. That's in public. We all know what he's doing in private. Does the Right Honourable Lady take this House and her own backbenchers and the voting public for fools? Whether she does or not, the Prime Minister certainly does. He wrote in the Yorkshire Post with some gall that this amountment, and I quote, is a serious plan backed by billions of pounds of investment, when we know from this statement that it is not. Can the Right Honourable Lady confirm how a £45 billion cap on a scheme that was costed way more expensive than that back in 2019 can possibly deliver projects which are already estimated to be so much more than that value? What guarantees exist that schemes will be completed in full, and when this House will be finally given the detail that it deserves? Because perhaps she ought to remind the Prime Minister what he told the Yorkshire Post back in 2019, promising to deliver Northern Powerhouse in full. Today's announcement offers nothing better than dither, delay, and a further decade away from spades in the ground. How can she and the Prime Minister pretend that this is the delivery of Northern Powerhouse Rail when it is anything but that? By their own admission, no budget has been set out. The cap in funding gives no confidence that funding which will have to be raised from the private sector or through local taxes is in place. So can she tell the House which local taxes will have to rise and by how much to fill the gap created by her own £45 billion cap? I know she, like me, cares deeply about ensuring Parliament is told the whole truth. But perhaps on this occasion it is the Prime Minister himself who should be lauded today when he said, time and again, that the cuts and downgrades this government has foreshadowed today represent nothing more than, and I quote, a betrayal of the North. So I ask the Secretary of State, isn't it the case that this is a strategy from a desperate government to make a cut appear an investment, an attempt to save face with the British public, to spend months and months hiding their mealy-mouthed plans, only to reveal them with bluster and misplaced confidence, is a sad indictment of a sorry government. To come to this House today without dates, budgets and a plan for how to raise shortfalls after the cap is frankly pitiful. To spin this as a plan for the future is a disgrace, and one of which she should be ashamed. She cannot escape the facts that her party came to power with no plan on how to deliver on their promises, and their complete ineptitude at managing the public finances means they're now having to U-turn even on those promises. If the Metro mayors and backbenchers had any backbone, then rather than genitalously jostling for position under the next Labour leader, today they'd be acknowledging the truth in what I've said and calling out this betrayal.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I can't believe what I've heard, to be honest. I mean, I know he's standing in for the Shadow Transport Secretary today, but really I hoped he would have done a little bit better than that. He talks about no budget being set out. We have set out £1.1 billion to be spent over the next 4 years, far more than his government ever spent on Northern Powerhouse Rail in the 14 years they had an opportunity to make improvements to the rail network in the north of England. If that's the way they approach basic maths when we're spending over £1 billion, I can see why the public booted them out of office at the last election. Mr. Speaker, we are working in collaboration with local mayors, and we have agreed with local mayors that where they see opportunity to boost economic growth beyond the core scope of the Northern Powerhouse Rail proposals, we will work with them to agree local contributions so the full benefits of this investment can be realised. Mr Speaker, more generally though, I think this was a classic case of the honourable gentleman writing the questions without listening to the announcement. We are delivering Northern Powerhouse Rail in full. We have set out our plans in full, we are funding MPR in full, and we will deliver it. He mentions the previous government and their aspirations. Let me remind the House of what that actually amounted to. The plan that got the location of Manchester wrong on a map. The plan that promised new tram lines that had already been built. The plan that diverted funding away from the north to fix potholes in the south. That plan was not worth the paper it was written on, and so we'll take no lessons on this from the party opposite. But if he won't listen to me, maybe he'll listen to the people who run our great city regions in the north. The mayors of West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire and North Yorkshire said, we welcome the government's once-in-a-generation commitment to improving transport across the north. The mayor of the Liverpool City region said, after more than a decade of dither, delay and broken promises, this is the start of a new era with a genuinely strategic approach and a government finally backing Northern Powerhouse Rail in full. The mayor of Greater Manchester said, finally, we have a government with an ambitious vision for the north and a firm commitment to Northern Powerhouse Rail. And let me quote one more person. MPR is a project I've long championed, so it is excellent to see the government backing it in full. Not the words of a Labour mayor, not the words of a Labour minister, but the words of former Conservative Rail Minister Hugh Merriman. Mr Speaker, our plans are backed by the mayors, they're backed by business leaders, they're backed by their own former Rail Minister. That tells you everything you need to know about who is delivering for the North and who never did.
Ruth Cadbury, Chair of the Select Committee.
Mr Speaker, this is another hugely welcome transport statement from the Secretary of State for Transport and her team. Today's announcement promises levels of rail connectivity for communities from Merseyside to Tyneside that will compare with that of the London travel to work area. The question I and many have today is when will we have more details about the timescales and the potential funding sources for phase 1 and 2, and most importantly phase 3 of today's statement. Phase 3 being linking Birmingham with the Northern Powerhouse Rail network, so desperately needed, so cruelly and ridiculously cancelled by the party opposite when they were in government, so that we can relieve the pressure on the West Coast Main Line and link up London and Birmingham with the cities of the north.
The Chair of the Transport Select Committee is completely right to say that the proposals that we're announcing today will deliver rail services for the north that are comparable to those in London and the South East. A turn-up-and-go railway where you can go to the station, not having to check the timetable before you go, because you know that a train will be there within a reasonable time frame. And you know that if you miss your train, you're not going to have to wait for an hour to get the next one. She's right to press me on timing about when more information is going to become available about the different phases. The first phase of improvement relates to the corridors into Leeds from Sheffield, Bradford and York. We will be progressing with urgency on those, as well as the plans for the new line between Manchester and Liverpool. Phase 3 of MPR relates to further Transpennine improvements beyond the Transpennine route upgrade. And we will be saying more in due course about our plans for Birmingham to Manchester, noting that the delivery of that will come after MPR has been completed.
Tim Farron, Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I have read the statement and indeed listened to her carefully, and I'm very grateful for early sight of it. We are massive supporters of Northern Powerhouse Rail on these benches. But we actually have, all we have really concrete in this statement, is just over £1 billion, so we can spend the next 4 years planning to maybe come up with another plan. So the failure of the previous Conservative government to deliver infrastructure projects like this and HS2 was utterly depressing and embarrassing, but I hope she will understand the scepticism of many of us in the North, not just on these benches, who fear this government is being worryingly pedestrian too, lacking in the determination to deliver vital projects like these. High-speed rail for the North delivered at snail's pace if we are lucky. So my questions are, would I be right to surmise from her announcement that while we will see upgrades in the 2030s, which is a long time away still, we won't actually see trains running on the new track much before 2045? What confidence can she give us that we won't see even more slippage in that timetable? What guarantees can she give us that we won't now see a repeat of the Conservatives' approach of stop-start, 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 cancel? And finally, of course, could I remind the Minister that the north of England does not stop at the M62? And while we are proud of our cities of Leeds and Manchester and Liverpool, the biggest visitor destination in the north of England is actually Cumbria. Yet there is not a single mention of either Cumbria or Lancashire in this statement. Nothing on the vital upgrades, needed to the West Coast Main Line north of Warrington, especially in the light of the recent derailment at Shap. And we still continue to wait for the government to invest in the all-important Lakes Line to Windermere, where a simple passing loop at Burneside would double the line's capacity at a fraction of the cost of Northern Powerhouse Rail, directly connecting Manchester Airport to the heart of the English Lake District. Might the Minister agree to meet with me to discuss these vital projects to help prove this government's concern for the North includes the actual North?
Mr Speaker, I can assure the honourable gentleman that we are getting on with this and we will see these improvements delivered. I don't share his cynicism that we will spend the next 4 years simply coming up with a plan. The £1.1 billion that has been allocated is for land acquisitions, it's for early preparatory works on the Yorkshire schemes. We will see delivery in the 2030s and passengers seeing benefits of some of those schemes. But what I won't do is make the same mistakes as the last government when it came to HS2, who let contracts before the scope of schemes had been finalised, essentially a free meal ticket for building contractors. We will take the time to do this properly, spend taxpayer money wisely. Of course, I want to see the delivery of rail infrastructure speeded up, but I also want to make sure that every single penny of money that this government spends is well spent. He asks about whether I can reassure him about the stop-start nature of plans being drawn up and then delivered. We have taken our time to come up with a credible, sequenced, prioritised programme of improvements in stark contrast to the previous government, and I can assure him that this is a plan for the whole of the north of England. And I'd also gently remind him when it comes to Cumbria and our government's commitment, over £13 million investment from the Department for Transport in Carlisle Station, Cumberland with an £18 million multi-year bus funding deal, Borders Rail Viability Study £10 million. So he should remember that we are investing across the north of England in improving public transport for the travelling public.
Lucy Powell.
Speaker, and it's nice to speak from the backbenches for the first time in a very, very long time. Can I strongly welcome this commitment to Northern Powerhouse Rail and the vision that underpins it? This will be game-changing for the North. After decades of underinvestment, poor connectivity and years of indecision by the party opposite, this really is going to transform lives. But does she agree with me that in order to ensure that long-term reliability reliability, the capacity for generations to come. We have to solve the problem of Manchester Piccadilly Station finally having through capacity in an underground station, which will truly unlock the connectivity between Liverpool, Leeds or Sheffield and Manchester Airport, and unlock the real potential of the whole regions across the north.
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend for her contribution, and she talks about Manchester Piccadilly, and I'm reminded of the words of Mayor Andy Burnham, who has said to me that he sees the potential for Manchester Piccadilly as being a King's Cross for the north. I agree with her that we need to resolve the issue of throughput through that station, and I will be working very closely with the Mayor on plans for that station to ensure that we can unlock the regeneration that we are all united in wanting to see in the heart of the great city of Manchester.
Robbie Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've spent years fighting to ensure that Bradford is at the heart of the North's rail network, and therefore I very much welcome today's announcement. But after decades of empty promises for the North from Whitehall, my constituents also need clarity. Secretary of State, we have seen 13 U-turns in 18 months from this government, including the West Yorkshire tram network. So I ask the Secretary of State, how much will be specifically spent on Bradford Station project, and when will the Bradford Station project be completed? Because with 4 general elections, at least 4 general elections between now and 2045, which is the period of time that this statement relates to, my constituents and I are worried that this simply will be another future U-turn in the future.
I can wholeheartedly assure him that this is good news for Bradford Station. I've been working very closely with Councillor Susan Hinchcliffe, the leader of Bradford Council, and of course Mayor Tracy Brabing, the Mayor for West Yorkshire. We will be pressing forward with the work that's already underway with the Council on a business case for Bradford Station, and I'm very conscious that in doing so we'll be putting a young, dynamic city of 500,000 people at the heart of the Northern Rail network. We expect to reach decisions on the station by summer of this year, and we have made funding available to then move forward into detailed design subject to the conclusions of that business case.
Mike Kay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. February will represent the 25th anniversary of the opening of runway 2 at Manchester Airport in my constituency. With capacity for 60 million passengers, this announcement will finally allow it to achieve its full potential. Does the Secretary of State not agree?
I wholeheartedly agree with my good friend, and the selection of the route between Liverpool and Manchester was to a large degree determined by the importance of providing better connectivity to Manchester Airport, not just for people in the northwest, but also those travelling across the Pennines from other parts of the north of England. It has the potential to be a real generator of economic output, and I look forward to working with him further on the proposals, given how dear I know that airport is to him and his constituents.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I completely disagree with the Tory spokesperson's comments about the betrayal of the North from this Labour government. Whilst I don't think this plan's by any means perfect, it's a damn sight better than what we saw from the last government. At the last week's Transport Oral Questions, I pressed the Minister about the improvements to the York Area Capacity Scheme and was told that it was not ruled out. But I was surprised to see that in the statement and the documents circulated today, there was no mention of that York Area Capacity Scheme, which would relieve pressure and congestion at Skelton Junction, which would improve rail network and connectivity across the north. So will the Secretary of State rule out the cancellation of the Skelton Junction improvements, and will she commit to making sure that they are part of this scheme going forward, and why they weren't in this document today?
Can I say to the honourable gentleman that in the announcement today, we are ruling things in. We are not excluding things from funding through other funding sources. We will be setting out in the normal way future rail network enhancement programme funding, for example, and so I'm happy to continue the conversation with him about what further benefits we can bring to the York area. The benefits of MPR in particular we'll be working with David Skaith, the Mayor of Yorkshire and North Yorkshire, on the master plan for York Station and the massive brownfield regeneration opportunity, one of the largest in Europe, that lies directly next to that station.
I want to help everybody. Those who have actually got involvement in this are the ones I really do want to get in. We've got 3 statements on, so hopefully we can get, because I really know it matters, especially to the north, we've got to get the people in. So please, if we can help each other, it would be really useful. Jim McMahon.
Speaker, this is welcome. The north of England has been held back for far too long, with the people and its economy not being allowed to realise our full potential. And so too is the commitment to properly review the Manchester-Piccadilly Underground alongside the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Without this, it leaves one route in and one route out, with trains forced to turn back onto the network, slower, second rate, and it's not something the North can support. But can I ask for more details? Firstly, on the funding of the Manchester Airport local contribution, to ensure that it's both fair and at a level that can be fairly raised locally. And secondly, on the timing of the Birmingham to Manchester line, can we have a clearer idea of timescales from the dispatch box?
I can assure my honourable friend that we will be having detailed conversations with local partners, including Manchester Airport, and we will ensure that any contribution is fair and locally agreed. It is important that organisations that will benefit directly from the improvement of rail links make a contribution, and I look forward to those discussions happening in the coming months and years. He asked about timing for the Manchester to Birmingham element of the route. I have been clear that the priority for investment are the 3 stages of the Northern Powerhouse Rail scheme, and so the improvements to Birmingham to Manchester would come after these schemes have completed construction, so into the 2040s.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sadly, we've heard all this before, and yes, I admit that some of the ambitious proposals of the last government haven't come to fruition. But the Labour government are now... The Labour government are now finding that it's very easy to criticise. I don't recall that the criticism coming from Labour benches when we were in power was, don't worry, by 2050 we can solve the problem. Right. It was that you had immediate answers. Could I suggest to the Secretary of State that instead of these ambitious proposals, she actually announced something that she could deliver? If she shook her petty cash tin, she could find the few £1,000s it would need to extend the King's Cross to Lincoln service through to Grimsby and Cleethorpes and boost the local economy there.
Come on, you're making a statement, not even a question in there. Secretary of State, I'm sure you could just rustle up a quick answer.
I will ask the Rail Minister to write to the honourable gentleman and update him on the particular scheme that he is advocating.
Sharon Hodgson.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Can I welcome this fantastic announcement today, particularly regarding the Leenside line, which runs from Philo and Gateshead through my constituency in Washington and onto Ferry Hill in County Durham, as well as being the line that will finally bring the Metro to Washington, which I have campaigned on since I first stood to be an MP back in 2005. This investment will be transformative for my constituents and the whole North East. And so although we are still a little way off spades in the ground, does the Minister agree with me that this truly is the difference that a Labour government, together with Kim McGuinness, our Labour North East Mayor, makes?
Can I just pay tribute once again to the long campaigning that my honourable friend has done for the Leenside line. I recall her excitement when we announced the extension of the Tyne-and-Wear Metro to Washington as part of the spending review, and I look forward to working with her further on the work we will be doing to look at the business case for the reopening of the Leenside line that I know closed many decades ago.
Lisa Spark.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Safe, reliable and affordable railways are vital for economic growth in communities like mine, so I welcome the Secretary of State's statement today, because we haven't seen that investment in our northern communities for too long. For too long, our infrastructure has been neglected, and as a result, our northern communities haven't been able to fulfil their potential. I want to build on what some Greater Manchester colleagues have been asking about Manchester Piccadilly and some of the enabling work around Ardwick and around Ashbury's that would unlock improving services to communities like mine, so on the Rose Hill line, or maybe even tram train to Marple. How can the Secretary of State ensure that communities like mine can feed in so we make this project reach its full potential, so it gets a 10 out of 10 rather than a mediocre meh?
One of the reasons we've taken our time to make sure that we're working with the local mayors is so that we can properly ensure that the improvements to intercity connections that will be delivered through MPR can be integrated with local improvements as well. Mayors in the north of England have had a multi-billion-pound funding settlement through Transport for City Regions, and really to unlock the regeneration potential in many of the towns and cities that we know have untapped potential, we need to make sure we get that integration right.
Imran Hussain.
Mr. Speaker, and I strongly welcome this statement which recognises that Bradford, one of the largest and youngest cities, cannot be left behind any longer. I, along with my colleagues, the Honourable Member for Bradford South, Madam Deputy Speaker, and the Leader of Bradford Council, have long campaigned for a new station and better connectivity for over a decade. But what we cannot have, Mr. Speaker, is Bradford to wait another 2 decades. So can the Secretary of State confirm that the new station and the connectivity will be part of phase 1 of this programme?
I know he has championed the station in Bradford enormously over recent years, and I can assure him that we will press forward with the work already underway with the Council on a business case for the station, and as I said, to reach decisions by the summer of this year. And we have made funding available to then move forward into detailed design pending those decisions.
Sarah Poacher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a North West MP, I of course welcome all efforts to improve connectivity across the north for my constituents of Runcorn and Helsby, but the devil is always in the detail. And I've looked at the Liverpool to Manchester proposals, and they're actually 20 minutes slower than what currently exists now. And also, the Secretary of State talks about improving accessibility to Manchester Airport, but this link actually stops a mile outside of the airport, and you have to get a bus into the airport, so it actually doesn't even go to the airport. Would the Secretary of State assure the House that she will review the points that I've just made? Thank you.
I'm interested to hear the Honourable Lady's contribution, Madam Deputy Speaker. She claims that she is supportive of anything that improves the public transport network in the north of England, and yet the Reform Party in September of last year came out in clear objection to the Northern Powerhouse Rail scheme, basically telling the public that they should just accept their lot and be grateful. So I look forward to hearing from her colleagues in future about whether they have reversed their position on Northern Powerhouse Rail and finally seen the light.
Graham Stringer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I appreciate the way the Secretary of State introduced this, recognising the lack of investment there has been in the north of England. But it isn't even as though there hasn't been jam to go around. At the same time, there has been almost zero new investment in the north of England. We've had Javelin trains, the Jubilee line extension, Thameslink now, the Elizabeth line, and all the expenditure on HS2 in the south of England. So, given all that money has weighed down the south of England, and the crucial part of this scheme, which I pay tribute to the Secretary of State for recognising, of the underground station at Piccadilly, does she think it's fair that local contributions will be expected for that scheme when most of the other schemes have been paid out of direct taxation? Why should the north not be treated the same way that the south is being served? Is it fair that taxpayers, local taxpayers, have to pay for what is part of the national infrastructure?
I do agree with the honourable gentleman that the public in the north of England have had to put up with a second-rate transport system for far too long. We're determined to right that historic wrong, invest in the necessary upgrades and get spades in the ground. I would observe that when it came to the delivery of the Elizabeth Line and Crossrail, there was a local contribution through a business rates retention scheme. And indeed, if you look at other investments in the capital, there's been enterprise zones, land value capture, and those are some of the ideas we would like to discuss with Northern Mayors.
And David.
Our Madam Dirprwy Llefarydd. Today's announcement directly affects Wales, given that the Northern Powerhouse Rail is a project that Wales is footing the bill for, along with HS2 and the Oxford-Cambridge Rail. Although I have to say I'm delighted for my northern friends that they're getting this. The price tag now owed to Wales adds up to around £6 billion, yet the government expects us to be satisfied with the £445 million over 10 years that we're having in Wales instead. So how much longer does the Secretary of State think that this farce can go on? Isn't it time that rail was devolved so funding can be directed back towards the people of Wales instead of any other project which is classified as an England-Wales?
The £445 million investment that was announced at the spending review is historic, and we do recognise that there has been underinvestment in Welsh infrastructure. This is really significant investment. It will deliver new stations, faster journeys and better services for passengers, as well as connecting people to jobs and driving economic growth.
Hi, Betts.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could I first of all thank the Secretary of State for the improvements announced to the Sheffield-Leeds line and some of the improvements to Sheffield-Manchester, though, as my right-hand friend's already said, we need a through route to Manchester Airport as well. In particular, I want to ask her about the tram-train project, which she and Oliver Cobbard have committed to doing the business case at work on. My honourable friend for Penistone Stocksbridge has certainly fought for this as well. Could I say to her, Germany's been running tram trains for 40 years. We've had one pilot scheme in this country between Sheffield and Rotherham which has worked as a success. Can she now see the development of tram trains generating growth, housing and jobs in Sheffield as a precursor to rolling tram trains out across the country, which will be beneficial to a lot more areas?
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend for that contribution, and he and I have spoken about this issue in recent months. I've also had more recent conversations with the Mayor of South Yorkshire about his aspirations around tram train, and I look forward to working with him closely to make sure that we properly integrate the benefits that are going to be brought through Northern Powerhouse Rail with schemes that he wants to see promoted in the South Yorkshire Combined Authority area.
Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents stand to benefit enormously from the improvements in capacity and connectivity which the Secretary of State announced both to Manchester Airport and indeed to Birmingham. But does she agree that one of the big benefits here, and she talked about growth in her statement, is the impact on reducing congestion on our roads and indeed the pollution it produces? That is massively important, both whether it's to MPR or to the Birmingham to Manchester and I would say Liverpool part of the link in the northwest. And the big difference, it seems to me, between what she announced, or one of the big differences, is that she set out an outline plan. We never had that in the multiple dozens of announcements we had from the party opposite starting in 2014.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for his question, and he's entirely right that a reliable, affordable, frequent public transport service, including that new rail line between Liverpool and Manchester, will enable and encourage more people to leave the car at home and make those journeys in a more sustainable way. I mean, it strikes me as ludicrous that at the moment it takes an hour and 25 minutes to get a direct train from Liverpool to Manchester Airport for a journey of less than 30 miles, when you can get from Paddington to Reading in 22 minutes, which is a journey of similar length.
Mark Sewards.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
As chair of the Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire APPG, I absolutely welcome that Phase 1 of the Northern Powerhouse Rail project prioritises Yorkshire. It will absolutely generate growth and opportunities for people in my region, and it's something that members of the APPG on both sides of the House have long campaigned for. But with my city, Leeds, in mind, can I ask when my residents will benefit from this Phase 1 investment? And can I also ask the Secretary of State if she agrees with me that we should accelerate the delivery of the West Yorkshire Tram project so that my constituents can benefit both from better railways and a mass transit project?
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman, and I should just say that what we've announced today in terms of improvements for Leeds and the surrounding area is additional to the existing improvement plans for Leeds Station. The government is obviously looking at Leeds South Bank as a potential location for a new town in an existing city, and I'm very aware that Leeds is now known as the Northern Square Mile, given the attractiveness of that city to financial services. I am working closely with Mayor Tracy Brabin to ensure that we deliver the mass transit system, because I think Leeds is the largest city in Western Europe not to have a mass transit system, which we've got to put right.
Alex Serval.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to warmly welcome the news that we're finally going to get Northern Powerhouse Rail today. The fact that we're starting in Yorkshire is historic. The world's longest continuing railway, Middleton Railway, is operated since 1758, and it will be just metres from the lines that will be improved. Can I ask, that railway helped kick-start the Industrial Revolution. This could kick-start a new revolution for the north of England. Is she working with MHCLG to look at housing growth, to look at jobs growth, to look at maximising the benefits of Northern Powerhouse Rail in the way that our Victorian forebears did?
Very much so, and if we were able to bring productivity in the north up to the average levels of productivity, we would see the UK's economy growing by about £40 billion a year. This is not just about trains, it's not just about tracks, it's about leveraging in private investment, new jobs, new homes, city centre regeneration, breathing life back into our town centres as well. And I look forward to working with him further on it.
Joe White. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Secretary of State has just said, this is the evidence that we now have that cross-government working is in action. The Treasury, the Department of Transport and MCHLG, setting the case, establishing confidence that the North is open for business, the place to invest, to build and to live. We have a government that has the self-assurance to shift away from the well-trodden path where growth is traditionally centred on London and the South. The record is clear. The Tories underinvested in the North time and time again, and Reform have already opposed everything that Northern Powerhouse Rail stands for. Their betrayal of the North must never be forgotten. Order, that was so voluble. Please, Joe White. Well, I would welcome the member to withdraw that.
Yeah, I do withdraw that. I'm sorry. I apologise.
Joe White. No. Thank you. Order. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Their betrayal of the North must never be forgotten.
Hear, hear.
For this to work, however, we need our council leaders and mayors to play their part. For constituencies like Bassetlaw, Bolsover, North East Derbyshire and Chesterfield, our East Midlands mayor must be part of the dialogue and the investment strategy for transport planning and connectivity. We all want to open our doors to businesses on the back of this, and will the Secretary of State ensure that our East Midlands Mayor, Claire Ward, has a place around the table?
I work closely with Claire Ward and have enormous respect for the work that she's doing in the East Midlands. I recognise the point too that she was making about the position of the Reform Party on investment in rail in the north of England. I know she had to deal with some chuntering from the other side, and might I just observe that perhaps the Honourable Member for Runcorn might like to just Google what one of her colleagues said back in September, when he was absolutely unequivocal that he would not back Northern Powerhouse Rail and that he would not back better public transport in the north. This Labour government has exactly the opposite ambition.
Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a member of the Public Accounts Committee who did an inquiry into HS2, I really have to warmly welcome the Secretary of State taking such a disciplined and clear approach to making sure this delivers and delivers on time and value for money, as the TransPennine upgrade has. But as a Bradford MP, I would like, with others I'm sure, Madam Deputy Speaker, to join in thanking the Secretary of State for backing Northern Powerhouse Rail, but particularly for backing Bradford. The new station and the improved link to Leeds will make a massive difference, not only to the city of Bradford, but to the wider district. So will the Secretary of State assure me that these transport investments by this Labour government will deliver not only better connectivity, but also jobs and new homes to the whole of the Bradford district?
Yeah.
I'd like to say to my honourable friend that one of the things we have to achieve through Northern Powerhouse Rail is making sure that young people who are growing up in towns and smaller cities around the big conurbations can easily access the high-quality jobs in places like Leeds, places like Manchester and Newcastle. So I can assure her that the approach of this government is one that is about investing in skills, it's about investing in transport, and it's about investing in opportunities for the future.
Paul Wall. Lawrence Turner.
Thanks very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. A little over 2 years has passed since the last Prime Minister chaotically took the axe to HS2 north and east of Birmingham, and the Mayor at the time, Andy Street, failed the test of leadership and failed to stand up for our region. Now, there is an obvious link between the east-west connections that she's been talking about today and the south to north connections along the West Coast main line. So will she meet and her ministers engage with West Midlands MPs about the capacity issues she has set out, and can we not lose sight of the importance of the West Midlands to East Midlands connection, which is as slow as the connections in the north?
I'd be very happy to meet with him and colleagues to discuss this matter further. I'd also like to pay tribute to the work that Mayor Richard Parker has done in the West Midlands alongside Claire Ward in the East Midlands for working collaboratively with us to make sure that we can not only improve intercity connections, but also those connections that are so important within big cities as well.
Marie Tidball.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's announcement today confirming the biggest investment in rail connectivity in a generation, including £7.5 million for South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority to kickstart plans to extend the South Yorkshire Supertram, including to look at a tram train extension to Stocksbridge via Outerbridge, Warncliffe Side and Deepcar in my constituency. Does my right honourable friend agree that this tram train extension will build on the government's commitment today to finally give Yorkshire the transport network our communities deserve?
We are committed to giving everyone in Yorkshire the transport networks they deserve. As I said in response to my honourable friend, the member for Sheffield, we do want to work with Mayor Oliver Coppard to explore the potential of tram train further. I know she has been a fearsome advocate as well for the Penistone line in her constituency, and there's further engagement going on with Kirklees Council on that issue as well.
Abdissam Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I also, like my Sheffield colleagues, strongly welcome the government commitment to upgrading our Sheffield station and putting faster and more frequent trains in place to Leeds and Manchester. It will increase our city centre regeneration and will be of strong benefit to our universities and students who commute into the city. Will the Minister meet with me and other South Yorkshire MPs to discuss timescales and ensure that our infrastructure and plans match the economic ambitions for growth and regeneration in Sheffield?
I will certainly ask the Rail Minister to meet with her and colleagues, and I do think that 2 fast services an hour between the key cities of Leeds and Sheffield is simply not good enough. We're committed to improving those services and to providing the capacity that's required at Sheffield Station. I look forward to discussing it further.
Nav Mishra.
Deputy Speaker, this announcement is excellent news for northern towns and cities. Manchester Airport is a large employer in my constituency, and sadly since COVID we lost the direct connectivity from Stockport Station into Manchester Airport. So I think it's important to restore timetables to some of the timetables to pre-COVID time. Can I also encourage the Secretary of State to look at the Access for All scheme, which unfortunately is far too slow and far too many train stations do not have disabled access, and we need to, in order to make rail better for everyone, we need to make it friendly for people with mobility issues. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
I do agree with my honourable friend about the importance of accessibility at rail stations, and I note the case that he makes about Manchester Airport. I would also point out that in addition to the new line between Liverpool and Manchester that we've announced today going via the airport, there is over £100 million of funding going into Manchester Airport Station at the moment to lengthen the platform so we can have longer trains and more frequent services calling there. That's investment that's happening now.
Before I call the next speaker, can I just ask that people keep the questions very short, because otherwise we will not be able to get everybody in. So please help each other out. Conor Naismith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I begin by expressing sincere and enthusiastic thanks to the Secretary of State for the announcements today. I have been campaigning, and some would say badgering, ministers in my entire time in this place to address capacity challenges on the West Coast Main Line arising from the steaming pile of mess left to this government on HS2. So I welcome today's announcement that the government does intend to build a new rail line between Birmingham and Manchester. But following 14 years of mismanagement of projects like this, how can the Secretary of State assure me and my constituents that these projects will actually be delivered, and how will they be insulated against backwards, anti-growth, populist forces who we know would reverse these plans in a heartbeat?
Well said. We're going to give confidence to the public that when it comes to rail infrastructure, we're spending taxpayers' money wisely. We will learn the mistakes of HS2 and make sure that we do the work properly to start off with, so we're not wasting taxpayers' money in the way that the previous government did with their oversight of HS2.
Luke Charters.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. By my reckoning, York is the biggest winner of this new rail revolution. The new Haxby-York North Station, the York Station Master Plan upgrade, the TPRU route upgrade, and also the fantastic NPR new connections. Which of these does my right honourable friend delivers the most for my constituents?
I'm not entirely sure how to answer that question, Madam Deputy Speaker. He's been a fearsome advocate for his constituents, improving public transport in York and the surrounding areas. I was delighted when we could confirm that we were going to progress Haxby Station in his constituency at the spending review, and I look forward to working with him further to unlock the potential in that city and that region as a result of the proposals that we've announced today.
Elsie Blundell.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the announcement made today, which will unleash the potential of our northern regions and open the door to opportunities that have historically been denied to my constituents and so many across the north. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that it is the bold and ambitious schemes like Northern Powerhouse Rail that will silence the north's detractors, not that many are in their places today, from the Tories who left our rail network in the north of England on the brink of collapse to Reform who do nothing but talk down the promise of our proud and pioneering region?
I couldn't have put it better myself, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I think she is right that the public want us to be ambitious for the North and to make sure that the benefits of economic growth are spread fairly across the country, and that's precisely what our announcements today with Northern Powerhouse Rail will do.
Dave Robertson.
Speaker,
For 17 long years, constituents across Lichfield, Burntwood and villages have had to deal with the complete failure of HS2 Limited, while ministers were asleep at the wheel, and the chaotic Conservative cancellation of that scheme did nothing to alleviate those problems and instead replaced it with uncertainty on uncertainty on uncertainty. Unfortunately, all today's statement does is confirm that that uncertainty will continue for at least another 2 decades. So can the Secretary of State confirm for me that HS2 Limited, who are so hated by my constituents, will have absolutely no part in any rail infrastructure project north of Handsacre, that she will urgently ensure that me and other Staffordshire MPs have an opportunity to meet the Rail Minister, and that we can commit to the redesign for the Birmingham or the Handsacre to Manchester leg of HS2 to be completed quickly with a view to releasing as much safeguarded land as possible, as quickly as possible, so that constituents across my constituency, Staffordshire and further north, do not have to continue to deal with the problems that they've faced for so long.
I will ensure that the Rail Minister meets with the honourable gentleman and regional colleagues. I do recognise that in taking the right long-term strategic decision about capacity and providing more capacity on the West Coast Main Line in future, that there will be some people today who are dealing with more uncertainty, and I want to work with him and with HS2 to make sure that we treat those people with the respect that they deserve, and that we seek to minimise the disruption to people's lives as far as possible.
Sean Davies.
Conservative government, Telford became one of the largest towns in the country without a direct link into London. A train line which is overcrowded into Birmingham and into mid-Wales, and private operators falling over themselves to provide a solution being blocked by the Office of Road and Rail. I welcome today's announcements, particularly around the links between Birmingham and Manchester, but will she meet with me or the Rail Minister to explore all options to get Telford connected to the capital?
I'd be very happy to organise a meeting between him and the Rail Minister. He refers to some of the congestion challenges on the West Coast Main Line with regard to train paths and actually putting new services on. And that is why we have taken that long-term strategic decision today, recognising that we will have to address congestion and capacity challenges on that part of the rail network. And as I say, I'd be happy to organise that meeting for him.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And like you, I am a proud Northerner, but for too long we've had to face challenges of underinvestment in the north. So this is good news, particularly for Yorkshire. The plans for Northern Powerhouse Rail, alongside the upgrades to the Trans-Pennine route, which is on time and on budget, will be a game changer for our communities and economy. So can the Secretary of State state how this will particularly support regeneration and communities in northern towns like Huddersfield, and how MPR will build on and connect to the Trans-Pennine route upgrade?
Phase 3 of the plans that we have announced today will deliver improvements above and beyond the work that is happening at the moment with the Trans-Pennine route upgrade. And she's right to highlight the success of that programme in being on time and on budget, very different from the mega project of a HS2. And I'm very keen that we emulate the successes of the Trans-Pennine route upgrade through Northern Powerhouse Rail. Of course, it provides great opportunities as well to the thousands of people who are currently employed on the Trans-Pennine route upgrade, who can go on and get jobs working on the Northern Powerhouse Rail programme in future.
Jill Derman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is brilliant news today, not just for the north of England, but for North Wales too. With investment already in place for the North Wales Main Line, this will give us better connectivity for tourism and for employment and leisure to our great northern cities and beyond. So does the Secretary of State agree with me that we must continue to work together cross-border to give my constituents in Clwyd North the seamless transport system they deserve?
I do agree with my honourable friend, and I have a very close working relationship with Ken Skates, the Welsh Cabinet Member for Transport. He and I working on how best to prioritise that record £445 million that the government committed at the spending review to improve Welsh rail infrastructure. And I'm always happy to talk to her about her ideas about what more we could do to improve the experience of the travelling public in Wales.
Josh Fenton-Glynn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a Yorkshire MP, I couldn't be more proud that it's a Labour government who are delivering this change.
Yeah.
Can I urge the Secretary of State to look again at the Calder Valley line, which needs electrification, perhaps as part of phase 3 of this process, something which was promised by the party opposite in 2015 but then dropped after the election. So could we please look at that again?
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for raising the Calder Valley line and the importance of further electrification of the network. If I may, and in the interest of time, I will ask the Rail Minister to write to him with further information on that, but I appreciate that it will be important for his constituents.
Sarah Russell.
Deputy Speaker. Northern Powerhouse Rail will be great for economic growth across the north, and that will very much benefit my constituency. My constituency is geographically located in such a way that it should be great to travel to London, to Liverpool and to Manchester. Sadly, at the moment, it is usually terrible for travelling to any of them. Will the Minister please meet with me and talk to me about both accessibility at Sandbach Station, but also the quality and regularity of services across all of those areas, and how we can make Northern Powerhouse Rail deliver for Cheshire?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that contribution and appreciate how important it is to improve the quality of rail services to all the destinations that she mentioned. And some of the benefits of the plans that we're proposing today is that in parts of Yorkshire, for example, I appreciate that's a different part of the country that you could see enhanced services to London. I'd be happy to have a meeting with regional colleagues to discuss the specific issues that she has raised.
Lee Ingham.
Deputy Speaker. And I understand why today the Secretary of State has taken the sensible, long-term decision she has on the future capacity needs on the West Coast Main Line. But for residents in my constituency of Stafford, Eccleshall and the Villagers, who've had 17 years of worrying, it is more years of worrying for them. Can she assure me that she will listen to the concerns of businesses and residents nearby when making decisions about land powers going forward? And can she meet with myself and other impacted Staffordshire MPs to discuss this further?
I thank the honourable lady for her question and for the measured approach with which she has put that. I do know that this is an issue close to the heart of her constituents, and I know that the Minister for Rail is very keen to engage further with her and other affected members on this issue, and I can assure her that he will be in touch shortly to discuss the issues and a way forward.
Adam Jurgay.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's commitment to improve connections to Manchester Airport, so I hope she'll support my calls for a direct line between Stoke-on-Trent Railway Station, which serves most of my constituents, in Newcastle and Manchester Airport. As the Secretary of State heard from my colleague from Stafford and from Lichfield, a number of Staffordshire colleagues, whilst welcoming the intent and ambition of this statement, have concerns and questions about the impact locally. I've heard from countless people in Newcastle Lyme with their experience of the disgraceful and failed HS2 project. People in my constituency want clarity, to be heard and to know that there will be no repeat of the distress and destruction they were forced to live with. I'm grateful to her offering us a meeting with the Rail Minister, but I say to the Secretary, we would benefit hugely from a meeting with her as soon as possible.
I'd be very happy to join that meeting that I have already committed to on behalf of the Rail Minister, and I think given the breadth of issues that have been raised today, I think that would be appropriate. And just on the issue of direct service from Stoke to Manchester Airport, I do know that West Midlands Trains is considering the feasibility of amending its Stafford to Crewe service.
Gareth Entwistle.
Speaker, I welcome the fact that we are delivering Northern Powerhouse Rail, promised by the Tories, abandoned by the Tories, and now delivered by this Labour government. This will make a big difference to my constituents in Bolton North East, but Madam Deputy Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to take this opportunity to put on record my ask of the Secretary of State to work with the Mayor of Greater Manchester on extending the tram line into Bolton North East, and also ensuring better services on both Northern Rail and Avanti West Coast services.
I do know that we need to improve the performance on both the Avanti West Coast routes and northern routes. The Rail Minister and I are both seized of the importance of doing that, and I will also assure her that I'll continue to work with the Mayor of Greater Manchester to ensure that the intercity improvements that we've announced today are properly integrated with those local mass transit improvements that she is advocating.
Jonathan Davies.
Much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I very much welcome this generational investment which will not just benefit rail in the north of England but the whole country through economic growth and regeneration. And I particularly welcome the investment going to Sheffield. That's a city used by my constituents not just as a destination but as a connecting city elsewhere. And bearing Sheffield in mind, can I invite the Minister to not lose sight of the benefits of electrifying the Midland main line south of Sheffield, which remains unelectrified down to South Wigston. That is something that would drive significant growth for people in mid-Derbyshire and benefit the country as a whole.
We did have to take some difficult decisions as part of the spending review this year on electrification, but we are continuing to keep the potential for full electrification of the Midland Main Line under review as part of our plans to decarbonise the railways.
Dr Alison Gardner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the Government's announcements today for Northern Powerhouse Rail. However, in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, we still sit in stasis, with legacy issues such as the HS2 compound at Yarnfield, which is costing millions. So may I ask the Secretary of State for clarity on plans for our railway services in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, and plans for HS2 legacy issues such as the Yarnfield compound?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising the issue of the Yarnfield compound. I'm not sure that her and I have actually spoken about this issue directly before, so if I might ask her to write to me with more detail, I'd be happy to come back to her and let her and her constituents know what more we can do to provide certainty in the way forward.
Andrew Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Our region, from our big cities to our small towns, is ambitious for our future. We're hungry to play our part in our country's economic recovery, and we've been impatient for the government to see our potential after so many years of undelivered promises. And the announcement to invest in NPR today shows that this government will meet that ambition head-on. Madam Deputy Speaker, the previous government issued an instruction to the HS2 Phase 2B Hybrid Bill Committee to remove the mid-Cheshire sections of the route from the bill. Can my right honourable friend confirm that the government intends to retain this instruction, or if it intends to withdraw it? And will she, if they do intend to withdraw it, will she write to me with details of the status of any undertakings and assurances made by HS2 to my councils and constituents as part of the petitioning process that would not be delivered for more than a quarter of a century and by an organisation that may by then no longer exist? Thank you.
I do understand the importance of these issues to him and his constituent. I have instructed officials today to resume work on the adapted hybrid bill. And if I may, given the detailed nature of his question, I would like to write back to him in response to ensure I get the information correct.
Lola McAvoy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On this side of the House, we're from the North, we fight for the North, and this Labour government will deliver the economic justice that we deserve in the North. As the Secretary of State, I'm sure will agree, Darlington, my constituency, is the home of the railways and has a proud industrial history of British rail manufacturing. Can she please outline how this investment and this plan will deliver for British rail manufacturing in my constituency and the rest of the North?
I'm left under no illusions, Madam Deputy Speaker, that my honourable friend is from the North and will fight for the North. And having enjoyed a very hospitable evening with her in Darlington at the Hitachi rail manufacturing plant, I know how critical that employer is to her region, and I'm pleased that the announcements that we are making today is not only an investment in rail infrastructure, but it is a down payment on that manufacturing base and their future, and realising the full economic potential of the region.
Final question on this statement, James Nash.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Over the past 5 years, per head transport spend in the East Midlands has fallen to just 54% of the UK average, which is the lowest of any region or nation. And rail funding is even more unequal, £175 per head in 2023-24, which is barely 40% of the English average. And of course, HS2 won't be coming to my constituency of Rushcliffe after the Tories scrapped the East Midlands leg in October 2023. So while I welcome the ambition and the scale of this announcement today, can I ask the Secretary of State to once more look at electrification of the Midland Main Line, which will have an immediate economic impact and can be delivered in this Parliament?
As I said to my honourable friend earlier, we are keeping this under review. We did have to take the difficult decision not to fund it in the spending review. That's not to say that his constituents aren't benefiting from improvements on the railway, and I know my friend, the local Transport Minister, is particularly excited about the new fleet of East Midlands trains, which are providing a much better passenger experience for his constituents, and we're determined to keep building on those sorts of improvements.
That concludes the statement on the Northern Powerhouse Rail. Point of order, Sarah Perching.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I believe that the Secretary of State has inadvertently misled the House as regard to our voting record. We have always supported more transport in the north. Can I ask the Speaker's advice as to how we correct the record?
To the honourable member for letting the Chair know that she wished to raise this matter. The Chair is not responsible, however, for how the Secretary of State answered her question. We now move on to the next statement, so I'll allow a few moments for the front benches to swap over. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With permission, I will make a statement on the decision to ban the travelling fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv from attending a game at Villa Park in November last year. This decision was taken by Birmingham City Council following the advice of the Safety Advisory Group, who acted on a recommendation by West Midlands Police. The House will be familiar with much of the detail in relation to this matter, not least as the Home Affairs Select Committee has applied itself to this with its customary forensic focus. But it is important to begin this statement by laying out the facts. On the 8th of October, at a meeting with a number of Chief Constables from across the country, I was informed that West Midlands Police was considering its options to ensure the game could be conducted safely. As the minutes of the meeting show, a ban on fans was one of the options under consideration. Policing decisions such as this are subject to operational independence. Politicians cannot dictate how the police choose to manage risk. And so while my department sought information thereafter on what decision was to be taken, I did not seek to influence it. I did not because I could not, while a range of options were still under consideration. All options remained on the table until a decision was eventually taken by the Safety Advisory Group on the 16th of October. The decision to ban the travelling fans taken that day was clearly of considerable national and even international importance. Maccabi Tel Aviv fans who sought to travel to this country to enjoy a football match were told they could not because the game's safety could not be guaranteed. This came, lest we ever forget, just 2 weeks after the most horrific anti-Semitic terrorist attack this country has ever known. On October the 16th, the day the decision was taken, the Prime Minister and I both voiced our considerable concern, setting out our belief that the game should go ahead with all fans present. The government sought further information from West Midlands Police and offered the resources required to ensure the game could go ahead. A subsequent meeting of the Safety Advisory Group was then arranged on the 24th of October. At this moment, the Chair requested, and I quote, a wholly fresh consideration of the issue, at which point the intelligence provided by West Midlands Police hardened and the recommendation to ban fans was upheld. In the days that followed, it was clear to me that an external review of the decision was required, as well as a review of wider questions around safety advisory groups. On 31st of October, I commissioned a rapid review by His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, Fire and Rescue Services, Sir Andy Cook. And on the 27th of November, as the intelligence the force provided was called into doubt, I asked him to look specifically at that question. Today, I have received Sir Andy's interim report, and a copy has been placed in the library of the House. Sir Andy's findings are damning. There is no other way to describe them. The force, we now discover, conducted little engagement with the Jewish community and none with the Jewish community in Birmingham before a decision was taken. As Sir Andy himself says, it is no excuse to claim, as the force now does, that there were high holy days during this time that prevented this engagement. Most concerningly, Sir Andy describes an approach taken by West Midlands Police that he characterises as, and I quote, confirmation bias. This means that rather than follow the evidence, the force sought only the evidence to support their desired position, to ban the fans. This saw West Midlands Police speak to Dutch police following a game in which there had been fan violence, while failing to speak to other countries, Greece, Ukraine and Denmark, where Maccabi Tel Aviv had played more recently and more peacefully. The West Midlands Police engagement with the Dutch police is one of the most disquieting elements of Sir Andy's report. The summary, provided as evidence to the Safety Advisory Group ahead of their crucial meeting on the 24th of October, was inaccurate. Claims including the number of police officers deployed, links between fans and the Israeli Defence Forces, the targeting of Muslim communities, the mass tearing down of Palestinian flags, attacks on police officers and on taxi drivers were all either exaggerated or simply untrue. In his report, Sir Andy is clear that the validation of intelligence conducted by the force was a cause of significant concern, that record-keeping within the force was poor, and he was especially concerned about the handling of sensitive information that should never have been shared without redaction. Sir Andy also points to a series of public statements from West Midlands Police that we now know to have been misleading. He shows that the police overstated the threat posed by the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans, while understating the risk that was posed to the Israeli fans if they travelled to the area. Misleading communications also extend to the words of the Chief Constable himself at his appearance in front of the Home Affairs Select Committee, when he claimed that AI tools were not used to prepare intelligence reports, a claim since refuted by one of his own officers who blames incorrect evidence on, and I quote, an AI hallucination. I know better than most that West Midlands police officers do their duty bravely day in and day out. Sir Andy's report does not argue that the entire force is failing. But what is clear from this report is that on an issue of huge significance to the Jewish community in this country and to us all, we have witnessed a failure of leadership that has harmed the reputation and eroded public confidence in West Midlands Police and policing more broadly. Faced by a game of such importance, the Chief Constable of the force, Craig Guilford, should have ensured more professional and thorough work was done. As Sir Andy himself says, the shortcomings detailed in his report are, and I quote, symptomatic of a force not applying the necessary strategic oversight and not paying enough attention to important matters of detail, including at the most senior levels. The ultimate responsibility for the force's failure to discharge its duties on a matter of such national importance rests with the Chief Constable. And it is for that reason that I must declare today that the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police no longer has my confidence. It has been, as I understand it, over 20 years since a Home Secretary last made such a statement. But on the evidence provided by Sir Andy Cook, the Chief Inspector of Policing, that is now the case. Until 2011, the Home Secretary had the authority to dismiss a Chief Constable, a power that was removed by the last Conservative government. Today, it is only police and crime commissioners who hold this power, and so the Chief Constable's future rests with the local Police and Crime Commissioner and not with me. But I am sure that Simon Foster will now follow all due process as he considers that question for himself. I do, however, believe this illustrates that Home Secretaries should, in future, have this power restored to them. When a Chief Constable is responsible for a damaging failure of leadership, the public rightly expect the Home Secretary to act, and I intend to restore their ability to do so. I can announce today that this government will soon reintroduce the Home Secretary's power to dismiss Chief Constables in light of significant or persistent failings, and that this will be part of the government's upcoming white paper on wider police reform, with legislation to follow. I do not expect this power to be used often, but I think it must be available at those rare moments when it is warranted. Madam Deputy Speaker, Sir Andy Cook's report is devastating. It catalogues failures that did not just affect the travelling fans, they let down our entire Jewish community in the West Midlands and across the country. I speak today not just as Home Secretary, but also as a Member of Parliament for a Birmingham constituency. In his report, Sir Andy says he believes the police acted in an attempt to avoid long-term damage to local community relations. If that is the case, what a grossly misguided effort it was. Peaceful, harmonious communities rely on a police service that, above all else, pursues the truth. In a world in which misinformation flows freely and dangerously, the police, in this case, added further misinformation into our public debate, when they could and should have provided the truth that could have allayed fears. In doing so, West Midlands Police did not support community relations. Instead, they inadvertently made things worse. This must serve as a lesson to police forces across the country, a reminder that they are called to their profession to serve truth and the law, to police our streets without fear or favour, and that community trust and cohesion depends upon them doing that above all else. And with that, Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is a shameful episode. West Midlands Police had evidence that Islamist extremists based in Birmingham planned to attack Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. Let's call that what it is. It is vicious anti-Semitism. And we cannot allow violent Islamists to impose their will on our country. Yet that is exactly what West Midlands Police, through weakness and through fear, allowed to happen. They should instead have confronted the Islamist extremists. In fact, they should have investigated the extremists for inciting racial hatred, as Jonathan Hall KC said only yesterday. But instead, they capitulated to the Islamist mob by banning the Maccabi fans. But it gets worse. The West Midlands Police then tried to hide what they had done. They fabricated a claim that it was the Maccabi fans who were the dangerous ones. They claimed a previous game in Amsterdam had led to violence by the Maccabi fans. This claim was a pack of lies from start to finish. The Mayor of Amsterdam and Dutch police have now confirmed the West Midlands Police simply made the whole thing up. The Chief Constable must be fired. The Home Secretary claimed a moment ago that she now has no powers to dismiss the Chief Constable. But she failed to mention to the House Section 40 of the Police Act 1996, which remains in force today. Under that, she as Home Secretary has the power to direct the Police and Crime Commissioner to do things, including dismissing the Chief Constable where, and I quote from Section 60, subsection 1, any part of the force is failing to act in an effective manner. That test is quite clearly met. Part of the force, the Chief Constable, is indeed failing to act in an effective manner by the Home Secretary's own analysis. If she's unfamiliar with this piece of legislation, I've got a copy of it here. The Home Secretary must today use her Section 40 powers to go through the process to direct the Police and Crime Commissioner, Simon Foster, to dismiss Craig Guildford. She must stop pretending to have no power and actually act. And now we come to the role of the Home Secretary herself in this scandal. In a briefing to the BBC on the 17th of October, a source close to the Home Secretary, which we all know means her special advisor acting with her authority, said the Home Secretary first knew about the possibility of a ban the previous evening, the 16th of October. We now know that is untrue. From evidence given to the Home Affairs Select Committee last week and by the Home Secretary's own admission just now, we now know Chief Constable Guildford personally briefed the Home Secretary on the 8th of October that it was likely away fans would be banned, and that was the police's recommendation. So will the Home Secretary now apologise for allowing her advisor to give the BBC untrue information on the 17th of October? And the Home Secretary herself must now answer this. She knew on October the 8th that it was likely away fans would be banned, over a week before the final decision was taken on October the 16th. Yet it appears, in those critical 8 days, she did nothing to investigate further or to try and stop it from happening. The Chief Constable, in his evidence to the Home Affairs Committee last week, said that when he briefed the Home Secretary on October the 8th about the likelihood of the ban, she merely noted, that was his word, she merely noted what he had said, not asking further questions or showing curiosity in what she was being told. She did not convene personally any meetings attended by her in the following 8 days or take any personal steps to clarify the situation. She expressed concerns and took action only after the decision became public on October the 16th, by when it was too late. She was asleep at the wheel at the critical time. Given the disgraceful events that followed, does the Home Secretary now accept that she was wrong to personally ask no questions? Officials may have asked questions, but she didn't personally ask any between October the 8th and October the 16th. Does she accept it was wrong to stand by and do nothing during those critical 8 days? And by the time she did take action after the 16th, it was too late. And by standing by during those critical 8 days, she allowed the ban to happen and let the Islamists win. Will the Home Secretary apologise to the House for that inexcusable inaction during those 8 critical days? And will she also commit to exercising her Section 40 powers to direct the Police and Crime Commissioner to dismiss the Chief Constable?
Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let me just first say to the Shadow Home Secretary, I have a long and very personal experience of standing up to extremists in Birmingham, not least in the last general election campaign. I think my track record speaks for itself, and I am a woman who knows of what she speaks. Unlike clearly him, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Shadow Home Secretary appears to be unfamiliar with the law or indeed Sir Andy's findings in his report. So let me remind him of a few things. Firstly, it was the Conservative government that removed the Home Secretary's direct power to remove a Chief Constable. It used to be a power contained within Section 42 of the Police Act 1996. That was repealed by the Conservatives in their 2011 Police and Social Responsibility Act, which explicitly removed the power. And I will quote from the explanatory notes of that Act, and I do believe that the Honourable Member for West Suffolk is very aware of what is in these explanatory notes, as I suspect he drafted them and approved them when he advised the former Home Secretary Baroness May. Those explanatory notes say the Secretary of State does not have power to direct a Police and Crime Commissioner to suspend or remove a Chief Constable. That is the law passed by the previous Conservative government themselves. And as he should well know, if he made himself familiar with how the law is to be interpreted and to be implemented, he would know that Section 40 of the Police Act, which remains in force in the 2011 Act, cannot be read in isolation. When these matters will be litigated before a court will be very aware of the direct powers removed by the repeal of Section 42. You cannot read the two things in isolation, and if he paid any attention to the detail, he would know that, and he would know that the Home Secretary does not have the power he claims that I do. Secondly, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would suggest that he and other honourable members, for their own interest, do actually pay attention to what Sir Andy has written in his report of today. At page 11, he deals with what the Chief Constable has suggested was the reading of the meeting that took place on the 8th of October. Let me just give a bit of context to the House. That is a meeting of police chiefs that I called myself following the attack in Manchester on the 2nd of October. I had already announced that I was going to look at police protest powers, and I had asked the most senior chief constables in the land, the National Police Chiefs Council, the College of Policing, and indeed Sir Andy Cook himself to attend a meeting with me. Towards the end of that meeting, we did some horizon scanning of other difficult decisions that were coming up that might have public order consequences, and this was one such matter. It was mentioned briefly by the Chief Constable, and his recollection of that is absolutely untrue. He did not say to me, or indeed anybody else in that room, that West Midlands Police had already made the decision to reduce the allocation of tickets to Maccabi Tel Aviv fans to 0, but that it was ultimately a decision for the SAG when it next met. That is absolutely categorically untrue. And I would say, given the seniority of everybody who was in the room that heard what was in fact said, if this was the case, it would have elicited a reaction, not just from me and my officials, but from many of the other senior policing officials who were present in that room. What was made clear to me is that the ban was a possibility, but it was one of a number of options that were being considered. And as late as the 15th of October, the Football Policing Unit made clear to Home Office officials and the Policing Minister that all options were still on the table. And the next thing we or anybody else knew about it was when the decision was taken itself on the 16th of October. And so, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it is important that all members stick to the facts in this matter, as Sir Andy has made clear in his factual findings in his report. There will be those who wish to play politics with this matter, but I'm afraid that does not meet the test of evidence as set out in the report. And I would recommend to the Shadow Home Secretary actually pay some attention to the detail on this matter.
Valerie Vaz.
Could the Home Secretary say, is she able to say, who the most senior police officer reviewed all the evidence, AI or otherwise, and signed off the decision?
Well, ultimately, the final decisions in this matter in terms of the West Mids police recommendation to this safety advisory group was the Chief Constable himself.
Dem spokesperson Will Forster.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The recommendation by West Midlands Police to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans was clearly an incredibly serious mistake. That has been shown and evidenced by Sir Andy Cook's damning report. The way they made the decision, not just the decision, the fact that they covered up their misleading statements, it is absolutely damning. These latest examples, after multiple denials that artificial intelligence was not used into coming to their decision, beggars belief and risks seriously undermining public trust in the police force, not only in West Midlands, but in the whole country. The Chief Constable of West Midlands does not have the Home Secretary's confidence. He doesn't have mine, and I assume he doesn't have most of the House. He needs to consider his position and go now. I'm pleased the Home Secretary did go quite unprecedented levels to say he should go, and I'm pleased that she's spoken to the House first. Will she later today be meeting with the the Police and Crime Commissioner to call for the Chief Constable to go? Madam Deputy Speaker, we need the Independent Office for Police Conduct to investigate what has gone on in West Midlands Police. Will the Home Secretary ensure that takes place? We have already seen delays to the Hillsborough Law and its duty of candour, including delays just this week. Does the Home Secretary agree with me that this incident shows the need for the Hillsborough Law to come under the statute book as soon as possible? And finally, we need urgent transparency and clarity on the use of AI by police forces. Does the Home Secretary agree with that, and what plans has she got to ensure guidance is given to police forces?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let me thank the Lib Dem spokesperson for his remarks. Let me just say at the outset, I have, as a matter of courtesy, informed the Police and Crime Commissioner in advance of making the statement. that I will be saying I do not have confidence in the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, but I have also reiterated and made very clear that the process, any statutory process and any decision as to whether the statutory process for further action against the Chief Constable is a matter for the Police and Crime Commissioner himself. He must consider that on his own terms, and I'm sure he will be making his own statement once he's had a chance to absorb the findings of Sir Andy's report. And given that there could be a statutory process, I will not be commenting on what may or may not be happening going forward in order to respect the independence and integrity of any future decisions if they are in fact made. On the IOPC, let me just say to him, I do expect that the Police and Crime Commissioner will consider his position on this matter and approach the IOPC if he deems it necessary, but that is a judgment for him. I also expect the IOPC to consider whether these findings mean that they should use their own power of initiative to conduct an investigation. He will know that they are, of course, independent, and it would be improper for me to seek to direct them in any way, but they do have those powers. I believe they've already indicated they will consider the position again once they've had a chance to absorb the findings of Sir Andy's report. I agree with him. This case proves why we need a duty of candour on all public officials, and I look forward to the Hillsborough Law becoming an Act of Parliament at the earliest opportunity. And just to say, on the use of artificial intelligence by police forces, I will be returning to these matters when I publish and come to the House to make a statement on the Policing Reform White Paper. I think it's important because AI is an incredibly powerful tool which can and should be used by our police forces, but regulating it to make sure it's always accurate is something that is of legitimate concern to us all, and I'll be saying more about that in due course.
Dr. Peter Prinsloo.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for her statement. It is disappointing, but perhaps unsurprising, that some of the evidence presented to the Select Committee was an AI hallucination. But as I look to the back of the opposite row, does the Secretary of State share my suspicions that there was indeed political interference with the work of the Birmingham Safety Advisory Group? And what will happen if this turns out to be the case?
Secretary.
Well, look, having commissioned Sir Andy to investigate these matters, I think it's important that we reflect on his findings, and he did find that there was no evidence that police officers were motivated either by anti-Semitism or as a result of political interference, or were otherwise behaving with malign intent, and I think it's important that I follow those findings that the independent inspector has made and act accordingly.
Ayub Khan.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this is truly a sad day for British politics, and despite all the rhetoric we have in this House, Brummies know the truth, that this is nothing but a witch hunt, and the Chief Constable is being thrown under the bus. The Home Secretary knows all too well that West Midlands Police have a reputation for working with all communities. They have never caved into community pressure. We all know this because we regularly have far-right protests and marches in our city. The police could have done a better job in terms of procedure, yes, but their reasons for banning Maccabee fans was the same from day one. We all know the unashamed racism and violence, that is the reason why they were banned, and that would have been brought to the streets of Birmingham.
Order, order, order. I am sure that the honourable gentleman is getting to his question. Ayub Khan.
The police did their job and now they are being punished for it. So I ask the Home Secretary, is it worth throwing our Chief Constable under the bus? Yes. Just to show that the words of right-wing media and Dutch officials under pressure from Amsterdam City Hall matter more than our British police?
I mean, the honourable member, I believe, used to be a barrister. You'd think that he might be more cognizant of the actual facts in this matter. I am responding to findings made by His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. That is the independent inspector of policing. It is a sad day for all those who believe that policing should occur without fear or favour. I would encourage him to read the actual letter from Sir Andy Cook, published today, in detail and reflect on whether he believes that we as a country should be able to rely and trust all information put out by the police. He purports to speak for every Brummie in the city. I think other Brummies in this chamber know that is simply not the case. I'll tell you what every Brummie and indeed every citizen of our great country needs and deserves, that when the police carry out a risk assessment, that we can trust it and that we can rely on it and that they will always be open and frank about what is really going on. That is not what happened in this case, and it is what we all should expect and deserve, whichever community we belong to. It is what we all need for our collective safety and the cohesion of our country.
Graham Stringer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's absolutely clear that by lies and conspiracy, the Chief Constable of the West Midlands created a no-go area for Jews in one of our major cities. He cannot, by whatever mechanism, continue in office, but will the Home Secretary consider prosecuting the Chief Constable for malfeasance in public office or in some other ways? We cannot let an appalling activity by a public servant continue in this way by just sacking him.
Home Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend will know it's not for me to make decisions on prosecutions, and the IOPC, I'm sure, will look and consider all of the findings made by Sir Andy Cook, and they will act, I'm sure, on that once they've had a chance to make that assessment. They are, of course, independent, and it would be inappropriate for me from this dispatch box to say any further about what either the IOPC might do or what indeed any other prosecutorial authorities do, but that is not that is not a power that the Home Secretary has.
Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Can I thank the Home Secretary, who, like me, is a local Member of Parliament, for her well-judged statement. But isn't one of the villains of this piece the Police and Crime Commissioner himself? When in government in 2010 we set up the PCCs, the aim was that they should represent our constituents to the police. Sadly, the reality has been the reverse, and nowhere more so than in the West Midlands, which is why I strongly support the government's decision to abolish the PCCs. Can we please ensure that this is not yet another policy announcement upon which the government U-turn?
Home Secretary.
Well, I can assure him that we will be pursuing the policy that I have set out, which is to abolish the post of Police and Crime Commissioner, and I will be returning to this House with a white paper, and we'll be making an oral statement in the not-too-distant future, setting out what we consider to be the best mechanism for oversight of policing at a local level, and a reset of where some of those powers sit, and another reconsideration of the Home Secretary's powers. So I'm sure we'll be discussing these matters in detail in the weeks to come. And may I just say, I think Sir Andy actually makes some of his own remarks in relation to the Police and Crime Commissioner, but I think it is known he was not briefed in the way that we might have expected on these matters. I'm sure he'll be setting out exactly what he knew and when he responds to Sir Andy's report.
Paulette Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this statement and clarity. The findings are damning. In my community, I was born and bred in Birmingham, and I am a local MP. And in my community, there is very little trust in the police. Can the Secretary of State agree with me that in an increasingly political world, it is important that in future, all Chief Constables need the skills to work in this new world, and that it is important that they are able to engage with all communities? Thank you, Madam Deputy.
Well, I thank my honourable friend and fellow Birmingham colleague for her remarks and her question. And let me just say that is exactly why I have made the statement that I have today, because I do believe all of us in this country need to be able to trust the police when they come forward and they say they have risk assessed an upcoming event and they've come to a professional judgment as to whether an event can take place safely or not. We all need to be able to trust that they have gone about making that risk assessment assessment in a way that is robust, consistent, in line with the law, and frankly just plain old truthful. That is not what's happened in this case. It's why I think it's been debilitating to public confidence in policing in our great city, across our region, but also across the country as well. And it's why I've set out what I've said about losing confidence in the Chief Constable, and it's why I do believe some powers for oversight of policing do need to return to the Home Secretary directly.
Sir Gavin Williamson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I think the Home Secretary is right to talk about the need for the information to be out there and to be openness. And in light of that, can the Home Secretary clarify as to whether any government officials talk to Maccabi Tel Aviv as a club or through either of the embassies to discuss the decision by the club to say that away fans would not travel even if the ban were lifted?
Home Secretary.
I think all of the conversations that have happened were set out by one of my officials and the policing minister when they gave evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee. There aren't any other discussions that I'm aware of, certainly not from the Home Office. I can write to him in case there were discussions in other government departments that might also have had an interest.
Tahir Ali.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think it was right and proper to have an independent report commissioned, and the findings of which no one can really challenge because it was done independently. What we need to be cognizant of is that it is not just that the Chief Constable needs to be made the scapegoat in all of this. The Safety Advisory Group had a huge part to play in this, and there was members of that were biased, that were in there with an agenda. Some of them, I'm ashamed to say, belong to my party. Will the Home Secretary agree with me that tough action needs to be taken against the individuals that set out to influence the decision on personal basis rather than as an independent member of that Safety Advisory Group?
I thank my honourable friend for his remarks and his question. Let me just say to him, Sir Andy Cook will be returning to the wider questions as to how safety advisory groups function, who is on them, the role that they play and the way in which they should carry out their duties. So we will return to that part of his remarks, I'm sure, in a later session in this House when the rest of Sir Andy's report is completed and he makes his final findings on safety advisory groups. But I share with him a concern that it is incumbent on us to make sure that the arrangements we have in place are capable of delivering a dispassionate, fact-based finding as to what risk an event poses, and that other political agendas are not brought into play, but what we're talking about is the proper functioning of the cultural life of our country.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This has been a really dark moment for policing in the West Midlands, and I thank the Home Secretary for her statement. I thank her for putting on the record her belief that the Chief Constable of the force should go. For avoidance of doubt, I agree with her. This has always been about the police being able to fulfil their role objectively, without fear or favour. Repeatedly, the Jewish community are made to feel that they are the ones who are the problem. That cannot go on. Yes. We've seen in this instance the police have surrendered to the pressure placed on them by an Islamic community that sought to create a no-go zone for Jews within the West Midlands. This is not acceptable. So will the Home Secretary update the House on what the government is doing to flush out anti-Semitism across public institutions and across society at large? And if she hasn't got time to expand on that today, would she come back to the House and give a statement as soon as possible?
Home Secretary.
Well, I thank the honourable member for his question. Look, anti-Semitism is a terrible stain upon our country, and it's incumbent on all of us to work together to stamp it out wherever it occurs. Sir Andy's findings, of course, do not suggest that anybody at the police force level acted because they were motivated by anti-Semitism or with malign intent, but it is undoubtedly the case that some individuals who were making representations to the police may well have been motivated by anti-Semitism. I also know others made good faith representations or wanted to make good faith representations to the police just about the fear of public disorder on the night, but some of those individuals will have been motivated by anti-Semitism, and that's why it's so important that when the police are carrying out their duties, they follow the facts, and that when they make their risk assessments, they do so on the basis of facts and their professional judgment as to whether something can go safely ahead or not. And we all need to be able to trust the police when they assert what their risk assessment has told them. That has not happened here. here, Sir Andy will come back with further findings about the functioning of safety advisory groups, and I'm very happy to discuss those with him and others in this House, as well as wider policy measures that I believe we will need to take as a government and as a country to stamp out anti-Semitism once and for all.
Gurinder Singh Jersan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for her statement. The West Midlands is an incredibly diverse area, and this whole episode has had a significant impact on community cohesion and competence in West Midland Police, particularly amongst the Jewish community, but amongst all communities. I therefore add my voice to the call for the Chief Constable to resign his position forthwith, and others involved in this shameful episode should also consider their position too. The police have a duty to act without fear or favour. Engaging with selected people or organisations is always a recipe for disaster, particularly as community groups very often have their own agendas. As somebody who has engaged in many safety advisory groups over the years as an event organiser, it's clear that the rules that need changing, that there must be more transparency, and the ability to manipulate their proceedings must be removed. So will the Home Secretary provide more information about the review into safety advisory groups that she's announced?
Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend. I expect to receive Sir Andy's further findings, particularly in relation to how safety advisory groups function and what changes we might need to make within the next couple of months, no later than that. And I will return to the House to enable all members to take part in a debate once those findings are out. And what I would say is I agree with him. In the end, all of us, we are all safer when we know that we can rely on the police to do their job without fear or favour. We do none of our ethnic minority communities, or indeed any minority community of any description, any favours, if we allow a suggestion to take hold that the police change their responses to things based on which community is involved. Everybody is safe when we know we can trust the police to follow the facts and do their jobs properly.
Sir Oliver Dowden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Jewish community in this country, including many in my constituency, feel under siege right now. And sadly, this is not an isolated example. It's just another example of where elements of the British state appear to err on the side of the aggressor in the name of community cohesion. We have another example before us, and will the Home Secretary, in her capacity as a senior member of the government with responsibility for tackling extremism, take the same robust approach to schools that are banning Jewish members of Parliament from visiting them on exactly the same community cohesion grounds? It has to stop, and a more robust approach must be taken by the government.
Home Secretary.
I thank the honourable member. Let me say to him the incident of banning of a Jewish member of Parliament from a school is obviously disgraceful, and he will know that other senior members of the government have already spoken out about this case. It is unacceptable. I hope he will see that the approach I have taken since I've been Home Secretary is to ensure that the law of our land is applied equally, without fear or favour, and in a consistent manner that gives every community across the country a sense of what they can expect from their local police, without feeling that they're in a postcode lottery, and it very much depends on the nature of your chief constable or the approach they take locally. That's exactly what I'm trying to achieve with protest powers, with wider thresholds in relation to the Public Order Act, where I've asked for an independent review by Lord Ken MacDonald, which will report soon. My intention is to make sure that every citizen of our country knows when it comes to all matters of law and order, we are all on exactly the same equal position, and that is the thing that I think is right for all of our citizens.
David Pinto-Tuchinski.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the Home Secretary's statement. The picture Sir Andy paints of serial failings in the West Midlands Police is utterly shocking, and the Home Secretary is completely right to withdraw confidence. Given the huge damage this saga has caused, what does the Home Secretary think can be done to make sure something like this never happens again?
Home Secretary.
Well, I think this matter has been of interest to all policing leaders across the country, and it is why I address the final remarks in my statement to policing leaders everywhere, because I think it's important that we learn the lessons from this event, and I hope that everybody will hear the message loud and clear. Operational independence will always be respected, but we all as a country, everyone, every citizen and every one of us as parliamentarians and as members of the government need to know that when the police make a risk assessment, we can trust that assessment and that we can rely on it.
Mike Wood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm proud that my father was a West Midlands Police Constable for 29 years, policing football matches during some of the darkest days of English football, but the Home Secretary is clearly right that there has been a failure in the leadership of West Midlands Police over recent months. The Prime Minister rightly said that oversight for the police ultimately lies with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and that doesn't seem to have happened in this case. The Police and Crime Commissioner also has specific responsibility for improving local relationships by building confidence and restoring trust in local communities, but both confidence and trust in West Midlands Police have clearly collapsed. The Home Secretary is right to say that the Chief Constable clearly needs to go, but shouldn't the Police and Crime Commissioner also be considering his position?
Home Secretary.
Well, I would direct the Honourable Member to the findings Sir Andy makes about what the Police and Crime Commissioner knew, and in fact he was not kept updated, but I'm sure he will be speaking himself once he has absorbed the findings made by Sir Andy, and I'm sure he'll be setting out what he thinks on these matters and what he intends to do next, but it's not for me to put words into his mouth.
Warren de Jos.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Although I am a proud Wolverhampton Wanderers football fan and as a season ticket holder regularly go to football games, for much of my life I was prevented from going to a football game and discouraged to go to a game because I was told that because I wore a turban and because of the colour of my skin I would be attacked. Can the Home Secretary please give some assurance to this House that we will never again have a situation in this country where football fans cannot go to a game because their safety cannot be guaranteed?
My honourable friend makes the point very powerfully, and that is why it is so important that all police forces always do everything they can to ensure that matters of great cultural and sporting significance in this country can go ahead safely and that people are not prevented from going and enjoying a game just because of who they are or the faith that they have.
Dame Caroline Diney.
Much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Among the catalogue of failure here is the news that the decision was partly made on the basis of a hallucinated AI report about an entirely fictitious football match. I wonder what assessment the Home Secretary has made on the extent to which AI is being used by police forces across the country, and if she knows of any other consequential decisions that may have been made using unverified AI. And finally, last month, after 2 months, my Select Committee, Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, finally received a response to our letter on this from, in this case, the Assistant Chief Constable, Mike O'Hara, who said, and I quote, "He was satisfied that the policing operation was conducted with communities and partners and was effective, proportionate, and maintained the city's reputation as a safe and welcoming place for everyone." What would be the Minister's message to him?
Home Secretary.
Well, I think the contents of that letter have now been superseded by the very august report and findings by Sir Andy Cook, and I would hope that everybody who has asserted that there was no problem here and everything has worked exactly as it should will now reflect on what they have said and done and give the rest of us confidence that these mistakes will not happen again. On AI, look, I think AI is an incredibly powerful tool and has a big role to play in assisting the police, particularly when it comes to sifting through evidence at speed and improving other productivity measures so that they can get on with the job of finding criminals and bringing them to justice. It's important that it's used in a way that is accurate and does not lead to misleading statements, as we've seen in this case, but also protects the validity of evidence, which ultimately has to be strong enough to hold up in a court of law. And that's why I'll be saying more in the Policing Reform White Paper in just a few weeks' time, setting out the government's approach and expectations of the rollout of AI to policing more broadly.
Lawrence Turner.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my Right Honourable Friend Home Secretary for her statement. As a Birmingham MP, I've set out on a number of occasions in this chamber my serious concerns about both the decision and the way that it was made, and it is clear that the Chief Constable's position is untenable. I pay tribute to the many police officers who are working hard to make Birmingham safer for all its communities. But this decision will not have arisen in a vacuum. Put simply, If there was a sufficient and professional culture followed at every level and by every individual in West Midlands Police, then this decision would never have been made. So does she agree that there must be sufficient assurance now that other decisions, including those that may not have the same national profile but are important to my constituents, have not been tainted by a similar failure of process? And if the Chief Constable does resign or if he is removed, does she agree also that measures must be put in place to make sure that the highest operational standards are maintained for everyone in Birmingham?
Secretary. Well, I thank my fellow Birmingham Member of Parliament for his comments and his question. Let me just say to him, Sir Andy in his report today does not make a broader finding of systemic failure. The failures that have been highlighted in terms of the approach to evidence and the way in which the risk assessment was carried out is in relation to this specific event. He didn't give us cause for concern about broader West Midlands practice, but of course, I'm sure the Police and Crime Commissioner and others, myself included, and all Birmingham MPs will want to assure themselves of the robustness of the procedures that the West Midlands Police have in place. I'm sure we'll return to these matters as there are further developments in this case.
Mark Pritchard.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I commend the Home Secretary for her robust statement today and the leadership that she's shown this afternoon. On the issue of community relations, could she assure me and other members that lessons will be learned out of this report, and other chief officers of other forces will look upon this as a reminder that they should be acting on behalf of the whole community that they seek to serve as chief officers. She mentions on not being able to direct the PCC in the West Midlands to dismiss the Chief Constable. But can I ask whether she is confident that there will be no conflict or conflict of interest, or the PCC won't feel conflicted in taking action in removing the Chief Constable? And of course, the Chief Constable, I'm sure, still has honour and therefore might choose to resign.
Secretary.
I thank the honourable gentleman. Look, he's right on community relations. Let me just reflect that I think there are many people acting in bad faith and with malign intent across our country who want to set Britain's Muslims against Britain's Jews. And I think that it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we don't allow those efforts to succeed. And in relation to the police and the approach to community relations, it's why I'm so clear that we must, all of us, whoever we are and wherever in the country we are, we must be able to rely on the police when they tell us they've come to a risk assessment and that the foundation of their risk assessment is robust and secure. If we can't trust the police on that, then I think we've lost much more than just good and effective policing, and he is right on that. And let me say to him on the position of the Police and Crime Commissioner, he will know I will not want to comment from this dispatch box on what the Police and Crime Commissioner might wish to do. That is a matter entirely for him. He will make that choice independently. I'm sure he will have to ask questions on that. There is no conflict of interest, let me assure him of that as well, simply because I have set out a view, having commissioned a report from the independent inspector. I think it's important I come to the House and set out my view, but the Police and Crime Commissioner is unfettered in terms of how he now approaches things, and that is a matter for him, and I've made that clear to him, as I'm sure all of his own legal advice will say so as well.
Antonia Vance.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I wanted to thank my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, for her words, particularly about the dedicated frontline police officers of West Midlands Police who serve my community and hers. It is clearly time for the Chief Constable to go. It is right that we expect a high standard of community engagement across all of our communities from all of our senior public servants, and this has clearly not been met in this case, as we've explored thoroughly in this statement. But I wondered if more broadly the Home Secretary might wish to comment on whether she might urgently bring forward a community cohesion strategy that tackles extremism, anti-Semitism and sets out clear expectations of how we live together in this great country of ours.
Home Secretary.
Thank my honourable friend. Let me assure her all matters of community cohesion are under intense discussion across government. My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, has already set up a task force to deal with anti-Semitism. I'm sure the Prime Minister and myself will have more to say in the weeks to come as to how we take a fresh approach. But it is a wider government question because, of course, the Home Office interest is on countering extremism, as it rightly should be. But, of course, the broader interest we all have on community cohesion sits across the rest of government as well, but I can assure it is a cross-government effort.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary quite rightly has lost confidence in the West Midlands Chief Constable, who kowtowed to thugs, abandoned the Jewish community and blamed Jewish fans. Now the question is to the Home Secretary, if the Police and Crime Commissioner fails to fire this Chief Constable, will she still have confidence in that Commissioner? And secondly, will she make the new legislation retrospective in order to ensure that action is delivered?
Home Secretary.
Well, the Honourable Gentleman will know that retrospectivity is not something we generally do in our legal system, and to take such a step would be a very new innovation here, but he should wait for the full proposals that I will publish in the policing reform white paper. And look, let me say to him that the next decision, if a further decision is made, is for the Police and Crime Commissioner. It would be completely wrong for me to try to influence that or comment on that or get ahead of that from this dispatch box here today. The Police and Crime Commissioner has the powers under the 2011 Act, as we discussed earlier in this session. It will be for him to reflect on whether he wishes to use his powers.
Johnny Reid.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This sorry saga with the West Midlands Police, I'm afraid, reveals a very serious story about public life in Britain, because it's become clear that employees within our public institutions do not recognise, do not understand, or possibly do not care about anti-Semitism in the police, in our local government, in our universities, political parties and elsewhere. And they're all too willing to accept their claims, the claims of anti-Semites, that their real objection is to the Israeli government at face value. They are unwitting agents of an agenda from the far left, the far right and Islamists. Anti-Semitism is rampant and unrelenting. Will the Home Secretary recognise the urgency of action and consider bringing forward a cross-departmental extremism strategy to address ideological anti-Semitism and other forms of extremism?
Well, I thank my honourable friend and her point about the stain of anti-Semitism in our country and the breadth and depth of how anti-Semitism is presenting itself in our country. Her points are well made, and they are problems that I am well aware of and working hard to try to resolve. There is a cross-government effort underway. We'll have more to say in due course. But let me assure her that from the perspective I take as Home Secretary, it is to make sure that our legal system and our law and order, the overall system of policing in our country is robust enough to be able to withstand attempts to frustrate or to improperly influence that system. It's important to remember Sir Andy Cook did not find that anti-Semitism was a motivating factor for the police officers who made these decisions in this case, nor were they subject to improper political interference or acting with malign intent. But I do accept the broader point that she has raised, and I just reassure her that that is something that we are working very carefully on.
Sir Alex Shelbrooke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And building on the comments from my right honourable friend for Hertsmere, my Jewish community have felt under siege for a decade now. And one thing that is worth paying tribute to is that the previous leader of the opposition, the now Prime Minister, drove out of their party the people who had given anti-Semitism a safe space. But let's not be under an illusion, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are many people who feel they still have that safe space for anti-Semitism. And whether it be in our universities, where huge numbers of students believe that they can, without impunity, hassle Jewish students, whether it be in our hospitals, as outlined in the Lord Mayor and Dame Penny Mordaunt report, which I know the Secretary of State is trying to address, that anti-Semitism is blatant and allowed to get away with. But we must call it at all levels, and I will call out right now, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Deputy Leader of the Green Party, who I am ashamed to say is a Leeds City Councillor, drove out into hiding the Jewish priest of the University of Leeds, and he is still in hiding. Shame. And they must be called out. So may I ask the Home Secretary that she uses every effort of her office across government to make sure that where anti-Semitism is still given a safe space, where it is still not being addressed, that they call out the leaders of those institutions and look at what action may be taken. This is another watershed moment, as odd as that sounds, but this time something really has to be done.
Home Secretary.
Well, let me reassure the honourable gentleman the government is taking action across a range of different departments in the education sector, in health, and also myself as Home Secretary to do everything we can to drive out anti-Semitism in every way that it presents itself, and particularly cognisant of the impact on our institutions and how some of our democratic underpinnings for how our society works can be overcome and frustrated and thwarted by anti-Semites seeking to undermine the very basis on which we run our country. Let me assure him every effort is being made, and I would just also reflect that, you know, as someone who has suffered racism and discrimination because of my own faith and my own race background, I think I can speak for most ethnic minority people in the view that we generally take of these matters, which is that none of us are safe until all of us are safe. There has to be solidarity across our country for every one of our communities. It is the collective whole that makes this country great.
Joe White. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a member of the Home Affairs Select Committee, I've been following this very closely. Safety advisory groups from Birmingham and Leicester last autumn banned or scaled down Diwali events. Does the Home Secretary agree with me that councillors should be removed from SAGs? Should there also be greater transparency to ensure that there is no reliance on confirmation bias, which is intertwined, in my view, with the risk of predetermination that local authorities have a duty to prevent when carrying out their judicial duties? Home Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for the work that she and other members of the Home Affairs Select Committee have done on this and other matters. And let me just say, because there are question marks over the way that safety advisory groups function, and I know, as she remarks, there have been other incidents of controversial decisions where people have had questions about how those decisions came to be made. That is the reason why I asked Sir Andy to look broader at the functioning of safety advisory groups and to come to a view on how they should be made up and the transparency that should be required of them and the process by which they should make their decisions. I think it's a little early to now make determinations about whether any politician should be represented on those groups. I think if the system was to work well, local politicians can bring a local perspective with the knowledge that only they have. But of course, if that then turns into an improper attempt to force their own political agenda, that cannot be tolerated. I hope that when Sir Andy makes some findings on these matters, we'll be able to return to whether policy or legislative change is needed.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome both the tone and content of the Home Secretary's statement today. She'll be well aware that when the draw was made that meant that Maccabee were going to be visiting Villa Park, there were attempts by extremist elements in the community to prevent the fixture taking place at all. When that failed, they moved on then to try and get fans banned because the club comes from Israel and the fans are Jewish. I've been to Villa Park on multiple occasions. It's perfectly possible for those fans to have been escorted by coach from the airport right outside the ground and for them to be escorted away from the ground immediately afterwards. It was very clear that Aston Villa fans were not going to attack the fans of Maccabi, but extremist elements within the community were going to. It is clear then that the police concocted evidence to support that case. And the reality is, whilst I completely agree with her about the Chief Constable, the senior leadership of West Midlands Police also have questions to answer about who fabricated that evidence, was it done under orders, and if the Chief Constable should go, surely they should go as well.
Secretary.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his remarks. Let me tell him, I know Villa Park very well because until the last general election, the club fell within my constituency boundary. And that is why, after the decision was made, the government and myself, through my officials, did seek to ask West Midlands Police whether there were other ways in which the match could be policed so as to enable it to go ahead, because we were very clear that banning of fans is a very extreme act to take, and in the general run of things we should want cultural events in our country to take place. So I do recognise the picture that he paints. The findings are damning, as I know many honourable members here have remarked already. Just let me say to him on the wider issue of other officers, I think in the end, the reason I've made the remarks I have about the Chief Constable today is he is the individual who leads the force. It's happened on his watch. It's for him to have set the proper culture where all of these risk assessments were done properly and where confirmation bias could not have taken hold. And it is the Chief Constable who, of course, made assertions and gave evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee in the way that he did. It's now for him to reflect on that. He may have things to say himself in the coming days, and it's for the Police and Crime Commissioner, I think, now to consider what further actions he might wish to take, including his broader responsibilities to make sure that the force is functioning as it should.
Sean Woodcock.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I say, as an alumni of the University of Birmingham, former resident of Selly Oak, I found this whole saga pretty much astonishing from the start. We've had mistake after mistake, evidence that turns out to have been made up. Meanwhile, the bond of trust with our Jewish community that has already been under increasing pressure has been caused further damage. Now, mistakes do get made, but when they are this serious and include presenting falsified evidence to a committee of this House, somebody has to take responsibility. And so I would echo the calls that have been made by members across this House for the Chief Constable to do the decent thing and to resign and to do it today.
Home Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend. I've set out what I think in my statement today. Others will now need to reflect on their positions and what further steps they might take. Let me just agree with him, though, that the findings of Sir Andy Cook's report are damning and devastating, and the bond of trust between a community and the police, once it breaks for one community, it does break for every community, and that is why these findings are so serious, and that is why I've said what I've had to say about confidence in the Chief Constable today.
Sir Julian Lewis.
If I understand the presentation of Sir Andy's independent report by the Home Secretary correctly, it says that the police knew that the visiting fans were not likely to attack the home community. Does it make clear whether or not they thought that the home community was likely to attack the visiting fans? Because if they thought that and then inverted reality to blame the visiting fans, that surely puts the Chief Constable in an absolutely impossible position.
The findings in Sir Andy Cook's report are about an overstating of the risk posed by the travelling fans and an understatement of the risk posed to those fans by others in the local community. So it isn't a case of one thing being presented as fact and the other not. There's an overstatement and an understatement that has taken place, and the effect of that has been to present a risk assessment that was imbalanced, wholly skewed in one direction, and did not adequately deal with all of the risks that were posed. I believe one of the reasons suggested for why the possible attack from local individuals against the travelling fans was about community relations. It's why what I said in my statement I stand by. Community relations in this country are not served by overstatements and understatements and a hiding of the full picture in order to keep things calm. The truth is what helps us all stay safe, and that is what they should have done in this case.
Mark Sewards.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I genuinely welcome the content of the Home Secretary's statement today and her answers to other members too. It's quite clear that the Chief Constable of the West Midlands position is just no longer tenable, but I accept her reasoning for why she can't remove him today, and I am pleased that she will reintroduce that power in the near future. It is a national scandal that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were not able to attend a football match in the UK's second city for what we now know were totally fabricated reasons. What does the Home Secretary say to those? How can she reassure Israeli fans of any sport that this won't happen to them again and that the law will be applied equally without fear or favour?
True.
I think the message needs to go loud and clear to everyone that our expectation is that every police force, when making a decision on any cultural or football or other sporting event in our country, has to do so by following the facts, acting without fear or favour, and if they do their job properly, then we will always be able to put on events, police them safely, and allow people in our country and from abroad enjoy the great spectacle of football or pop concerts or other things as well. They are important parts of how we function as a country, and they can only carry on being that if the police do their job properly.
Nick Timothy.
Speaker, can the Home Secretary confirm that the Prime Minister was also told that a ban was likely in advance of the announcement? The Home Office and Number 10 were in touch according to the official documents. Was she told of the intelligence of the 5th of September that armed Islamists intended to attack the Israelis? And on the point about operational independence, I do worry she's overstating things. It is obviously wrong for politicians to tell police officers who to investigate or arrest, but for public order situations, there's often a role for the Home Secretary when the planning work is underway before the operation. That's recognised in law, and it's why the Prime Minister himself has called for particular policing decisions in public order situations in advance. So can she confirm, when she was told that the police would seek a ban on away fans, she didn't ask to see the intelligence to justify the ban? Did she test the logic? Is it really true that she did nothing at all?
Home Secretary.
Well, let me say to the honourable gentleman, he's presenting a particular picture of operational independence, which he knows is a difficult line to tread for all Home Secretaries and something that is guarded very closely by police. But it would have been wholly inappropriate for me to try and carry out either my own risk assessment and if I was, as I was subsequently able to do once a decision was made challenging West Midlands Police on the basis on which those decisions, I was dependent on what they would have been telling. I would have been dependent on what they would have been telling me in the first place. I was not told that they would seek a ban on visiting vans. I was told that it was that all options were on the table, so it was one of the things that was being considered, but I was not told that it was going to be done. So I would refer him to Sir Andy's letter and the final page in the first paragraph of that letter, which sets out what actually happened, and I absolutely refute any suggestion that I was told definitively on the 8th of October in the way that the Chief Constable has suggested happened. That did not happen. Let me say to him on contact between the Home Office and Number 10, that would have happened in the usual way, but the first any of us were aware of the decision being brought forward, being made earlier than anticipated, and that a ban was going to be pursued was on the 16th of October. Sorry. And I was about any armed or planned armed attacks by local people. That was never put to me.
Paul Carla.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a member of the Home Affairs Select Committee, I asked Chief Constable Guildford on 2 occasions whether AI was used in the preparation of the police report, and he denied it both times. So I'm pleased the truth has emerged and he's now considering his position. However, can I press the Home Secretary on the use of AI? I hear what she's said, but whilst we await the Home Office's guidance, can she issue preliminary instructions to Chief Constables asking them not to use AI in such circumstances?
Well, I think I thank the honourable gentleman, and particularly for his assiduous work on the Home Affairs Select Committee in relation to the hearings on this matter. Look, I would hope all police leaders today have heard loud and clear the issue in relation to AI. I don't think any of them would want to fall foul of an AI hallucination. I think that at best that is a deeply embarrassing finding, but actually is pretty damning of the overall approach taken in this case, and I'm sure all police chiefs will want to make sure they don't come into the same position. The Home Office will set out our broader vision for how AI should be used by policing, because it clearly does have a role to play, but the way in which they should hold themselves to account and the regulations by which the use of AI should be monitored, so we can all have confidence that it's being used appropriately.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Home Secretary for her statement, and any procedural failings by our police force or any public authorities must be investigated and corrected and prevented. The report or the letter by Sir Andy Cook does mention that certain risks were overstated and understated, and that should be balanced. But the statements in this House that incidents in Amsterdam were completely fabricated are also statements that are fabricated. He does acknowledge there's evidence that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans targeted Muslims and pro-Palestinians in Amsterdam. A report by Kick It Out Israel identified 118 incidents of racist chanting by Maccabi Tel Aviv fans during 2024 and 2025, the highest for any club in the Israeli Premier League. UEFA fined Maccabi Tel Aviv €20,000 and imposed a suspended away ban fan for their match against...
Order. This question... Sit down, please, when I'm stood up. This question needs to be a question to the Home Secretary. Sorry. Iqbal Mahmoud.
My apologies, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's open season on Islamophobia in this room, and I am completely against any kind of racism, and anti-Semitism must be quashed, but so should Islamophobia. Will the Home Secretary confirm that there is no reference to anti-Semitic decision-making by the police in Sir Andy Cook's report, and there's no mention of any Islamist influence, because I have the report in front of me, in his report?
Home Secretary.
Well, what I would say to the Honourable Gentleman, and indeed all members of the House, is we should be led by the findings of the independent inspector. He's been very clear on where evidence was overstated. He's been very clear about where it was understated. He said that he believes confirmation bias was at work, and there are very significant failings of West Midlands Police in this matter, and that is why I have said what I have had to say in my statement today. Let me just say more broadly to him and to everybody else, I just reiterate the point. There are people in this country who want to set our minority communities against one another. Every member of this House should want to police that boundary and make sure that does not take hold in our country. But we can all only be confident that we are all subject to the same law across wherever we are in this country if we can trust that the police will apply themselves without fear or favour. It is in everyone's interest to make sure that these issues are dealt with properly, and every citizen deserves the same sort of response from the police, that when they tell us something is true, we can believe them. That's what's not happened in this case, and that's what needs to happen in the future.
And point of order, Sir Alex Shelbrooke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I seek your guidance on whether it is appropriate for members of this House to call into question the intentions of members when asking questions relating to this issue in the Home Secretary and accusing us all of peddling Islamophobia.
Can I remind all members to be careful of their language, to be moderate in their language, and treat this chamber and members within this chamber with respect, and then we can't go far wrong. Whilst it's not a point of order, it is a matter for the Chair, and I thank the honourable gentleman for raising that. That concludes the statement. Order, order. I will now announce the result of today's deferred division on the Draft Public Order Act 2023, interference with use of operation of key national infrastructure regulations 2025. Order, order. Order.